It's just so you
And they want
She asked me about it.
Right, she asked.
I would like to call the July operations meeting to order. I ask for a motion to approve the agenda. Mr. Denise, second by Mr. Lightfoot. All who are in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Akers? Mr. Akers.
Sorry.
We're starting. So all in favor, Mr. Akers? Any opposed? Motion carries. I ask for a motion to approve the June 14th minutes. Moved by Mr. Denisha and second please by Mr. Forsythe and Mr. Lightfoot. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all who are in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is carried. On to resolutions. I have Sheriff Bigworth. And we have a resolution modifying the 2021 budget for Operation Stone Garden Grant from the New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services. Sheriff?
Good evening, everyone. So this resolution is just an accounting issue that we've had with this grant from 2020. They're very finicky on it coming out to the exact amount. Because some of the accounting, there's $92 that need to be switched from the technical equipment to the federal aid line. So this is what resolution's about.
Second.
And Mr. Lightfoot will second that. Any discussion?
Rita, who moved it? I didn't.
I think Mr. Denisha did.
Okay.
Did you move it? Okay, so you want to move it, Mr. Perkins, move it. Mr. Lightfoot second.
Thank you.
Right. So any discussion from anybody? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The second resolution is modifying the 2021 budget from the Sheriff's Office to accept the fiscal year 21 CTZ-8 Red Team Exercise Grant from the New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services. I have it moved by Mr. Burke, seconded by Mr. Denise and Mr. Smithers. Go ahead, Sheriff.
Thank you. So this is a grant we've done several years now, where we have undercover officers go into stores to see if store owners and people that are in there pick up on any terrorist threats. What we usually do is actually have our officers go down to Jefferson County and the Jefferson County officers come up here so they don't know any of the individuals. We've been doing this for several years now and it works pretty well. We get full reimbursement for all of our overtime from the state, and that's the amount of $3,187. I'm looking just to move forward.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. So on the next resolution,
Yeah, I'm sure. I'd like to move to table this resolution until July finance. We don't have any figures to put in, but we have to
right, second for that,
Second.
by Mr. Akers. Any discussion? None, all in favor of tabling this?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you.
I have a
You may.
question for the sheriff.
Yeah.
Sheriff, can you explain the funding in the third paragraph of the Stone Gardens grant? What, if anything, is limited to?
I heard third paragraph, Joe, that's all I heard.
I'm wondering what the limitations are on the monies in the grant. In other words, what can it be spent on Or what can't it be spent on?
Right, so when you apply for this grant, it's quite a lengthy grant, and the specifics are inside the grant. There's certain equipment you can buy. Some of it's for overtime. You may purchase like something like a boat or a vehicle, depending upon use and need, and you can't supplant certain equipment. You can't supplant overtime. That's a big word they use, but there's a big grant. It's quite a lengthy grant. It's very specific on what you spend it on. It's just not, you get this chunk of money, you do what you want with it. It's very specific on what you do.
So can it be used for the day-to-day operations in the department?
No, again, that's that big word of supplanting. You can't supplant any of this equipment or overtime to augment your budget for your offices. But very good question.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Forsythe.
Yeah, another question for the sheriff. What's the jail count?
122 and growing quickly. We had 7 come in one day last week. At this rate, I dare say we may be housing out in a couple months, but we will see where we're at. Definitely uptick. I knew there would be due to COVID going away, thankfully. Courts going in session, but we've had a big influx recently, and we're at 122.
Okay.
Anyone else have any questions?
Just a quick comment to the sheriff. Sheriff, I'd like to thank you for the quick response to the issue over at Trout Lake. That was a petition, as you know, presented by it's about 180 people that were at the urban town board meeting, concerned with the speed. Pedestrians are huge, you know, there's a lot of pedestrian traffic and vehicular traffic, all related to the seasonal use of the lake, and getting that portable speed unit there, I think helped.
Right.
I know the residents were appreciative, and so am I.
Right. And just to make a point, obviously the safety is paramount to myself and our office. And to get that out there is, it definitely helps. I can tell you that I've probably received 7 or 8 other speed limit issues in this county in the last 2 or 3 months from other constituents in other areas of the county. Obviously, we try to address those spots and getting our officers in there with radar and educating the public about certain speed areas and speed limits. So glad to do it. It's all about safety, and our officers are out there doing it every day.
Anyone else? Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
So moving on to emergency services. I have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with New York State Office of Homeland Security to accept the fiscal year 21 Homeland Security Preparedness Grant and modifying the 2021 budget for emergency services in the sheriff's office. Moved by Mr. Perkins, second by Mr. Denisha.
Good evening, everybody. This is a joint grant that gets put together with Emergency Services and the Sheriff's Office. It's for the fiscal year of 2021. What this will do is it'll help with some technical equipment, some communications and dispatch, some uniforms and other technical equipment for the Sheriff's Department.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, I have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with New York State Office of Homeland Security for a fiscal year 20 PSAP grant and modifying the 2021 budget for emergency services. Moved by Mr. Forsythe, seconded by Mr. Lightfoot.
This grant here is for fiscal year 2020. This is the grants we usually get a little bit sooner in the year, but New York State was slow getting them out the door, of course, this year, which did make a lot of counties a little nervous, so we're very welcome when we finally got it. Like I said, this is one we get every year. This year, we're going to use this towards updated full equipment for our 911 system and dispatching.
Does anyone have any questions? Mr. Perkins?
Yes. Could you tell me what PSAP is? I've heard it before. I just
Safety answering point.
Pardon?
Public safety answering.
Thank you.
And we have 2, as you know, one in the city and one in the
Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, I have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a memorandum of agreement with the Department of Homeland Security to accept a temporary loan for mutual interoperable communication resources, moved by Mr. Forsythe, seconded by Ms. Terminelli.
This is an agreement that we do every few years. Mutual Link is a program that we have in the dispatch center, and every dispatch center in the state has it. What we'll do is, if there's any incident, we can patch everybody in the state together. What we usually here in St. Lawrence County is if we have a scene in DeKalb, the deputy coordinator can go down there and he can stir this up on his phone, bring it back to dispatch, we'll be able to see it. And if we get a call on the county line, say with Jefferson County, where they're different kind of radio system, we can put a patch in dispatch to the radio system, so we can use one of our channels and patch right over into the other channel. Also, if we had any incident happen at a school or something, where the patrols, deputy sheriff, safety, village, city PD are on scene, and they want to see the cameras or get a layout of floor plan, we can take it off our system and patch it right to the patrol car, and they'll get live feeds right to the patrol car every time. This is a program the state gives every county. We just have to do an agreement with them, like I said, every couple of years.
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up, we have a resolution modifying the 2021 emergency services budget for the purpose of purchasing an updated fit testing machine. Moved by Mr. Perkins, seconded by Mr. Smithers.
This is, we have 5 fit test machines here in the county. Emergency services is responsible for fit testing every interior firefighter in the county. We have 8 different fire districts. We use one machine, kind of gets shared between 2 of the districts, and we have one spare that kind of floats around. Mainly it sits in Oxford Fire Station. They're common enough to, if anybody can't make it to an annual fit test at their department, they can go to Oxford and they're qualified to do it for that department. So what this is last time we bought 3 in 2004, 3 in 2014, 2 in 2016. Since then, they've been considerably outdated. Things have changed quite a bit. Now, before a fit test could take you 15, 20 minutes, now you can get a fit test done in 3 minutes, 2 minutes and 20 seconds, actually doing it. So it does faster. Now with a lot of the health issues that come around in the pandemic that just went by, there's extra added fitness and filters. It's actually an alcohol cartridge that goes in. So none of the airborne particles when you're doing the test can escape. So this is updating our storm. So I'm asking for 1 for this year, and then I'm trying to put 2 in the budget for next year and 2 in the following. We currently have 5 machines, and I think 2 or 3 of them are out of service. So we're down to 2 or 3 machines.
Does anyone have any questions?
The operators,
All the operators are deputy coordinators. They do all the fit testing. So what they do is they schedule with the departments in the district, and they go down and conduct the fit test at the district.
Anybody else have a question? I have a quick one. So Louis still needed his fit training done? The fit test
The
done?
contact the deputy coordinator, will also at the same time we do their IP badges for accountability. We do them all on the same night. We get everybody together.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Jason Schoenhauer.
Rita, we didn't vote on that
Oh,
last
I'm
time.
sorry. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So Jason has an update of the lead grant for us.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, all. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great. I am going to share a screen here, so if you bear with me just for a second, I'll pull a presentation up. And if that looks okay, you should be able to see that. St. Lawrence County Lead-Based Paint Hazard Reduction Program. Thank you. So we we have been giving you these updates for some time now with regard to this program, and about a year or so ago, we gave you a little bit more of a detailed update. We're going to do another more detailed update this evening, just to make sure everyone is familiar with the program, and to let you know what has been going on over the last year or so. So again, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight about it. I'll start with a little bit of background, and please let me know if the slides are advancing here. With a little bit of a project timeline. So we were awarded funds for this back in December of 2018. It was a $1 million award that was granted to St. Lawrence County. Release of funds for the program came through in October of 2019 with a performance period of 42 months. So that started April 15th when the actual contract was executed through October 14th of 2022. Just a little bit more background on why we pursued these funds. St. Lawrence County was identified with as one of 4 counties that saw an increase in lead incidents in children. There were also some standards that changed at the New York State level, where we saw a reduction in the actual standard from 10 micrograms per deciliter of blood to 5 micrograms of deciliter. So what that means is that basically it increases the number of individuals, the number of children that are identified as having high blood levels. So with that information, as well as additional information about just the number of units that exist in St. Lawrence County, the older housing stock that we know we have, and some census data that showed us the number of older housing stock where children age 6 and under resided, we felt that something needed to be done. We didn't have any targeted money at the time to address these lead hazards, so that's the rationale for pursuing the funding through HUD. The program has some excellent partners. The planning office is working together with the St. Lawrence County Public Health Office and our subrecipient, the North Country Housing Council. We all have a little different role with the project. Planning is responsible for the administration of the funds, so the funding requests, the reimbursement requests, and general oversight. The Public Health Office is responsible for client referrals and also outreach. They push a lot of information out through Facebook, as well as North Country Now, and Jolene was on the radio last week talking up the program on a public access forum. So that's a public health's role is instrumental to this project. And finally, the third partner is the North Country Housing Council, which is responsible for program delivery. They manage the clients, they manage the contractors, and they address the final clearance for projects once they are completed. So some milestones. We're about $300,000 into the $1 million. We've received reimbursement for almost $300,000. So that leaves us about $700,000 to go. There's also a matching requirement, $100,000 in matching funds that have to be shown, and we've documented about 2/3 of that amount at $63,000. We have completed lead hazard assessments on 16 units in the county. We also have completed, in total, 7 units have achieved lead clearance, or what that means is they're completely done. They've been through the whole process and now are in a cleaned up state. The project has had challenges, and I'll go through three specific challenges here. The first is the high per unit costs for addressing the lead in these homes in the county. One wrinkle that we do have is a limitation that the funder, HUD, puts on us at a $20,000 per unit cap. Now, there is some wiggle room, and I'll explain that in a minute, but there is that initial $20,000 cap that is really problematic for many of the units that we're looking at. The cost for the 7 completed units range from $13,000 up to $24,995. So that clearly is over the $20,000 cap. However, there is some flexibility in that we need to present a case to HUD to say these are the reasons why this cost is over the $20,000 cap, and on a case-by-case basis, they will accommodate some of our requests, not all of our requests, because the next slide you'll see that we have many of our over 50% of the units that we've been looking at are over that $20,000 cap. Some as high as $65,000, and that's just the lead abatement in some of these homes, and that's given to just the size of the homes and the amount of work that needs to be done, why those costs are so high. There is also the challenge that we have that once we start the process, it is difficult to walk away if we are initially assessing a home and come back at a high price. It is difficult to walk away from those homes. So how do we address these project challenges? So I'll go through the three specific challenges, starting with the challenge and then what we're looking at to address the challenges. So the high cost units, yes, certainly we know the costs are high. We know material costs are just exorbitant now. Everyone is aware of the price of a 2x4 or a sheet of plywood, and just how it has grown, just exponentially over the COVID time here. So that's a challenge. Certainly we face that, but other entities face that as well. Other grantees around the country are facing those same challenges. And we've had conference calls with other entities and are really pushing HUD to see if there is any flexibility with the cap, the $20,000 cap. And we have not had any formal success on a across the board basis, but as I mentioned, we are able to get a little bit of flexibility up to that, so far up to that $25,000 mark. So other ways that we're addressing the challenges is through identifying leveraged fund. We have been using other funds from another grant, a state grant, to help buy down the costs of some of the expenses associated with those high costs. However, we've exhausted most of those, and so we're looking for additional leveraged funds, and that will get to our next resolution, our next agenda item, which is to apply for additional community development block grant funds through a CARES Act, which is COVID-related funding source through the state that we're looking to apply for in mid-August. And I'll explain that a little bit more when we talk about the resolution on the next agenda item. Moving on to the next challenge that we have, a small pool of lead certified contractors. That has been a struggle for this program since its inception. We have 3 local contractors that are actively bidding on jobs, but there are only 3. And we have specific additional requirements from HUD that require us to complete units within a 10-day window. Once we start, we have to complete majority of the work within 10 days. That's difficult to do when you have a smaller contractor and you have a big job. So One of our contractors is certainly is a larger operation, can handle the bigger jobs, but again, only one of those contractors can do that. So that's a challenge, certainly, with this project. So how are we addressing this challenge? We have been really beating the bushes to find additional contractors. We've sent out 55, reached out to 55 individual contractors, and are really hoping that that some of those will bid on our next jobs to help move along the process. That is the hope, that since there is a little bigger pool out there now, we cannot, of course, guarantee that there'll be additional bidders, but at least we know that there are other contractors that we've reached out to that may be able to help. We also want to train up some more contractors. We do have some funding left in our training budget, and we would like to train some local contractors to be able to participate in this program. That has been a little bit of a challenge, but we're hopeful that we can get additional contractors to be willing to participate and get the training that is needed. Okay, our third challenge is our application pipeline. What's a pipeline? It's basically the list of individuals that you have that are willing are wishing to participate. Unfortunately, we don't have a steady flow of projects that are under that $20,000 cap, but we're always looking for more projects to build up the potential for those smaller projects that are more manageable, easier to push forward in a more quick manner. Other challenges with this pipeline is this, again, is a new program. We haven't done this before, so we're still working through the bugs on this. It's still not as well known as some of the other housing programs that the county does operate. There is a pretty detailed application process that is necessary. There's funding limitations. There are income limits to this program, so that all adds to the whole application process in determining who can and cannot participate. Of course, we've had COVID to deal with, and fortunately we're coming through that now. But that was a limitation. We were limited in some of the work that could be done through the higher, more intensive times of COVID. And finally, as a challenge for the pipeline is just the complexity of some of the projects that are at a higher cost. When we look to leverage a lead project with money from another CDBG project or another funding source, it does just complicate the application process, and some individuals just have to walk away. It's just very, very challenging to work through some of those projects where you might have multiple contractors working on a job. So how are we addressing these challenges? Certainly technical assistance. We're offering as much help as we can on a one-on-one basis with individuals. We're getting out, meeting with individuals at their homes. That's become certainly easier now with COVID restrictions being lifted. But that is really the best way to do it is really that one-on-one connection. And we're continuing to advertise as much as we want, as much as we can. Excuse me. We're really pushing out more targeted outreach to individuals. I'll show an image here. You may have seen some of the public transit vehicles, the buses and the van that has advertisement on the side of it. Brochures. In the last several months, we've distributed over 2,000 brochures to healthcare providers, schools, food distribution sites, in an attempt to really get the word out more on this project to build up the pool or the pipeline as much as possible. Just a few slides left here. Looking forward, So we're optimistic, really. We are optimistic about this program. We've seen in the last 10 months since the COVID restrictions have lifted a bit, we've been able to complete 6 units. That is many more than we were able to do in the first year or so of the program because of the slower start and COVID. We also have 4 additional units that are under contract now, so they will be moving forward. We have 1 that will be going out to bid, and we have 9 that are in somewhere in the pipeline. Received an application, returned an application, are waiting for income qualification. They will hopefully move forward into the completed side of the tally going forward. Just a few pictures here of what do we actually do with these funds and the difference that we can make. Lead paint is not limited to interiors. It certainly can have a negative impact on outside the home as well if children are playing in the yard. So there is opportunity to repair or replace lead-based paint on the outside of the home. You see it's been resided. The lead paint abated and the new home resided, or the home resided. Going inside, notorious for having many layers of paint on them. It's deteriorated steps on the left. On the right, you see what's called a paint film stabilization undertaking, where they encapsulate the lead paint underneath the new coats of paint. And then replacement here on the left, we see some chipping, peeling paint. It's lead, it's hot for lead, and it's been removed, the plaster underneath removed, and drywall installed, or sheetrock installed in its place. So just some action items. Just to sort of sum up where we're at, we need to look for additional leverage funding. We're going to pursue additional funding through CDBG CARES Act funds to augment this grant. We need to train up some additional contractors, get some more contractors in the bidding process. We're pursuing that. And we need to keep talking up this program with constituents, with local officials, with you and with all the individuals that you reach out to say that there is funding out there still, and we do want to obviously help as many people as we can that do have this lead problem in their homes, since the funding is there. So I will stop sharing. And well, I guess the last slide is just questions. So happy to answer any questions that anyone does have on this program.
Mr. Smithers, go ahead.
Jason, in the picture of the stairway, I didn't quite catch what you said about how you treated that. Could you say that again?
Sure. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Smithers. Yeah, the stairwell was deteriorated, so there's there are multiple approaches that can be taken with lead abatement. One is a complete removal. So if a lead window frame was tested positive for lead, it's oftentimes easier to just swap out a wooden window with a new vinyl window. Stairwells, much more expensive to remove from the center of a house. So the approach there is called a paint film stabilization, which is a covering or encapsulation of the lead paint to ensure that it doesn't harm the individuals.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Tominelli.
Hi, Jason. Thank you for the update. I appreciate those coming pretty regularly. And I'm happy to see that you're reaching out to community partners. I know schools, going back to school and vaccinations needing to be up to date for sure. Pediatricians in schools would be a great way to get that information out. I'm not totally familiar with how the project is awarded, but let's just say if they did an estimate and the project was over $20,000. Are you able to divide the project into 2 phases and actually put it through as 2 separate projects where you prioritize the areas that the children are in more than areas that they may not be in, so that some of the projects that maybe don't qualify, we could still get those homes up to standard?
Great question, Nicole. The process is really, there is an opportunity to do that if we have the additional funding. So the lead paint, obviously the lead-based paint, we need to address where it's the most problematic for the residents. The intent of this program obviously is to protect the children, specifically children under 6, that are most susceptible to lead paint. Or the hazards of lead paint. So yes, so if we have a job that comes in or a bid that comes back and it's a high cost, it's over the 20,000. We will look to use some of those other funds to go in there to clean up everything that we can, and then do maybe some exterior work or some other work with other funds that may be able to come later on. So it's a little challenging just because of the way that the funding, the pots of money are allocated. But if we, one of the comments in the slide there, if we know that there is, if there are children in the home that have tested positive, we have to really address that item first, and we use whatever funds we can to address that as quickly as we can. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, just to clarify, so if the funding from the other areas wasn't available, could you do improvements or lead abatement up to $20,000, like emergency kind of in a home that maybe didn't qualify or we didn't have the other funding, just to get the immediate lead out of the area up to 20,000?
That's more challenging. They do want us to really address all the problems in the home. So if we, unfortunately, we have homes on our waiting list now that are just high cost homes, and we want to address them. But because they are over that 20K, we can't just spend up to 20K, do 2 rooms. We have to basically do everywhere that children might be in danger of being susceptible to lead poisoning. So yeah, it's really, it's not, I wish we could do it that way. I really wish we could do it that way, but that is not the way that the program has been set up or is allowed to be managed.
Thank you. Mrs. Gorsuch?
Yeah, Jason, thank you. The training for the contractors, where do they go for, how intensive training is?
Yeah.
Is there like license required or certifications?
There are a number of certifications. It's a week-long training. We did put on a training session 2 years ago. We had 4 contractors come through. The three of the 4 that are working with us now were trained at that training event 2 years ago. The 4th one chose not to continue to participate. It's a 2-stage process. They need to do the training, it's a 5-day training course. Then they need to write a test, and then they need to actually apply for certification through HUD. So it's not easy or quick, but we were able to get the three contractors trained up, and there are other contractors out there, some of which already have this training that we really would like to have them bid on these jobs, from out of the area. But depending on their workload, depending on the travel time, it may not be in there. It may not be worthwhile for them to bid on these jobs, but our hope is there, and our hope is that we will be able to train additional contractors.
Okay, and is there continuing ed afterwards? They have to update every year or 2 or something probably?
Yeah, there is continuing certifications that are required. Yep.
Okay, and just a follow-up. I saw the one room was tarped off is there air monitoring involved too? I know with asbestos, when they do it, there's an asbestos contractor that comes in, plus there's an air monitor that comes in to monitor the contractor. Is that the same with lead or no? Or?
There is air monitoring. There's a requirement, a clearance requirement. So the initial assessment determines the lead paint. The reason for that 10-day window is that's so we can basically move, if necessary, move people out of their home and then get them back in. So before people are put back into a home that has been addressed, there's a clearance requirement. They call it lead clearance. So again, people come back and swab everything to make sure that there isn't a lead presence left in the home. So in terms of air monitoring, I would say it's more of a surface monitoring than air monitoring, but it will settle out onto surfaces.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Fay?
And just, Jason, to ask this question, if I'm a contractor and I look at a job and I know it's gonna be over $20,000, right? Want to spend the time to bid on it? Wouldn't I be bidding on everything below 20?
Yeah, well, and that's a good question, Dan. That's one of the challenges that we have contractors that will bid, and their bids will come in higher than 20, and we tell them that, you know, we'll see what we can do, right? It's a bit of a conversation that we have with HUD. In some instances, we're able to push them higher. The one that I guess about $5,000 higher, the one that we've completed so far. So we always encourage those contractors to bid and, you know, tell us what it's going to cost, and we're going to go and see if we can get more money from HUD, if we can use money from another pot of funding source, which we have been able to use, and unfortunately that is pretty much exhausted now, and so that's why we need this additional COVID relief funding that will hopefully be able to be funded, so we can leverage additional costs. But yeah, it is a trick, because the contractor may just say, we can't do this for 20,000. It's going to be more than that, and that is one of the challenges.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Ms. Sager?
Thank you, Chairperson. This would be to the county administrator. Is that funding, you know the constraints that are on that funding, the CARES Act funding. Would this be something that would qualify?
I think with regard, Ms. Chair, can I answer? I think with regard to the American Rescue Plan funds, the CARES Act funds are very prescribed. So if we're talking about the American Rescue Plan funds, I think that some counties are taking this initiative and either supplementing or having their own program. They're looking at the CDBG qualifications. They're using some of those projects as a basis to enhance the availability of funding for that. So simple answer, yes, but I think there's a lot of creative ways that funding could assist with these types of projects.
I think I've confused the two things.
That's okay.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Denisha?
Sure. Jason, you listened to, I'm glad you brought up about North Country Housing Council. As you know, I've been very vocal in my disapproval. But I just, if I have been vocal about that publicly, I'm compelled to thank you for the letter that you forwarded me from a client that had some work done by a contractor under the auspices of the North Country Housing Council, and they were very pleased. They said they did a great job. We're happy. So I'm going to be critical when they're not doing well, but I'll be. I will thank them when they do well. So thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Anyone else? Okay. Draft resolution authorizing the chair to sign necessary application documentation with the New York State Office of Community Renewal for Community Block Grant Funding. Move 5. Mr. Denisha, seconded by Mr. Perkins. Any discussion? Sorry, go ahead first. Jason.
Thank you. Happy to talk a little bit more about this. This is a segue from the previous discussion. This is CARES Act monies. The county has received some CARES Act money in the past associated with COVID. Most notably, or what I'm most familiar with, is for the transportation, the transit system. But this is set aside money that is administered through the Community Development Block Grant Program through the Office of Community Renewal, which we have worked with for many years and have several open grants with. So we are familiar with the process. It's a little different animal because it's not their standard funding round. So there's a pre-application process which we will pursue, and then a formal application process. And we're still working out the actual dollar figure, but it will be for funds that will be used to assist homes that are getting help through this lead program as well, and will help to leverage that lead money with the intent to get more projects done.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Next up, we have a discussion with Mr. Totenhauer on the National Marine Sanctuary in East Lake, Ontario, and St. Lawrence River.
Thank you. So this is something that was, I guess, has been discussed in the past, or it was discussed last summer, the Lake Ontario Marine Sanctuary. We had brought you some information last year about this project. It's moving forward. They have now published a formal environmental impact statement, which is quite a lengthy document that identifies two specific boundaries. The one boundary includes the St. Lawrence River and a portion of the St. Lawrence River in St. Lawrence County in the town of Hammond. Another one does not include any of the St. Lawrence River. It's just in Lake Ontario. So there is a comment period that's open now on this draft environmental impact statement, and it closes September 10th. So the discussion, I spoke with the county administrator about having this discussion with you tonight, that I guess we can go a couple different ways on how to comment. If it is the pleasure of the board to comment, you can direct staff, our office, the planning office, to review that environmental impact statement and make comments on things that were discussed in the past. What type of impact will this marine sanctuary have on the shipping channel, on fishing, on diving, that sort of thing, and also suggest that the entity, the NOAA, move forward with selecting boundary area 1, which does include St. Lawrence County. So that's one option. Direct us to do it. We can do it. We'll have it in, obviously, by the 10th of September. The second alternative is that a formal resolution could be put forward by this body to specify the items about fishing and shipping, and also to request that the county or the waters in St. Lawrence County be included as well. That would need to be expedited a little bit because of the timing, because the deadline for comments would be before your September meeting. So the thought would be that a resolution might, if you wanted to go that route, might be brought forward on the Finance Committee agenda next week, and then it would be up for final approval on the August meeting, the 2nd of August, well in advance of the deadline on the 10th of September. So I put that out there for your discussion.
Okay, Mr. Reagan.
I would like to ask the planning office to draft a resolution asking NOAA to extend the boundaries lying beyond Hammond to Messina Dam, so that in order to encourage NOAA to look at all the wrecks on the American side of the river, and help make the public aware that we have a very rich shipping history that dates back 4 centuries. And I believe that this is an important opportunity for us to sort of get on the divers' maps around the country. And these underwater wrecks can be turned into a major resource to help attract visitors and attract tourists to see and discover our history and help build our tourism economy.
Anyone else? Seeing none. How many people have interest in putting forth the resolution? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So, Jason, can you get us a resolution?
Yeah, I'm happy to put something together. I will just discuss with Ruth how we want to, I guess, get it to you and get it on the Finance Committee agenda for next week, if that's your pleasure. Happy to do that.
Anything else about the marine sanctuary?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Thank you for all your information. I appreciate it. Maybe Mr. Corsa has a question.
Yeah, just a quick update, Jason, on the septic systems. How's that going?
Yeah, it is going. We do have the contract has been awarded now, and so we're just taking clients. We are still getting a lot of requests for people from the areas that are not in the service area this time around that were last time around, which is really unfortunate because we had them on a waiting list but we're not able to accommodate them because they're not in the specified service area for this contract. But yeah, we are moving forward. We do have the funds in place, the contract in place, and we're hoping to make some progress on that very shortly.
Okay.
So next we have Jenny Bacon and Tom Nichols for the Board of Elections. I have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign an early voting expansion grant and modify the 2021 budget for the Board of Elections, moved by Mr. Burke, seconded by Mrs. Haggard. Tom and Jenny?
Yes, this grant can be used for any expenses related to the cost of early voting. With the expansion of early voting, we will have some additional costs. We now will have to have an early voting polling place in Ogdensburg and Potsdam because it's got to be in the highest populated city and the highest populated township in the county. So we'll be able to use this funding for those additional expenses.
It will not cover all of our expenses, and what we're trying to do is get the biggest bang for our buck, but the board needs to know this is a completely different way of doing early voting than we have in the past. In the past, we've been able to utilize our existing staff and have the early voting right there in our building. So it's very easily managed, and any just along the way, we're easily taken care of. It's going to force us to create 2 completely satellite units away from the office that'll need supervision, and we'll have to find people who are willing to staff the sites for extended hours those days for inspectors. And we'll also have to have communities that want to have us locate there for a period of 10 days for a lot of extra hours. And not everyone really wants to have you there. I mean, it's one thing to have you there for 1 day. It's a very different thing to be there for a total of nine days. And as far as access and some of the other issues that go along with that. So those are all issues we've got to work through, and they're going to cost money. At the same time, we have to maintain all the operations in the office with absentee balloting. And of course, the rules are changing on absentee balloting now too, which requires we have those added up at a sooner time. So we have a lot of additional things coming, and you should know about it now and not later on.
Any discussion? Questions? I have one. Do we have an estimated cost for what these 2 places of early voting are going to cost the county?
We don't yet. We're just in the process of starting to research all that.
It also depends on the number, what's up for election, because I mean, we're gonna, if it's a presidential year, you're gonna have a lot more staff and more printers and more poll books. But so it's going to differ from year to year depending on what's on the ballot.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Carries. So next I have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign the Technology Innovation and Electronic Resource Tier Grant and modify the 2021 budget for the Board of Elections. Moved by Mr. Burke, seconded by Mr. Forsythe, and Ms. Haggard. Go ahead.
Okay, this grant can be used to upgrade software, technology, equipment, and broadband services. The allowable expenses include voting systems, absentee ballot scanners, ballot printers, and many similar items related to the technology used in voting. So this one we can use for a lot more things that may need to be updated. We could also use this to get some of the supplies we needed if all of the other funding didn't cover all of the early voting equipment that we would need.
Any Tom, do you have anything?
Just my concern is that this is year-to-year funding, and right now it's good for this year while it's fresh, but we're all gonna have to work together and keep lobbying Albany to make sure that these new mandates are funded by the state and minimize the cost to our local taxpayers, because that's what's gonna happen down the road. At least that's my fear, that as time goes on and these start to become a memory, we'll still have the responsibilities, and the state may forget its responsibilities. So we need to make sure we stay on their toes.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Jenny and Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with Juniper Networks and Meridian IT to purchase replacement network switches and management software. Moved by Mr. Burke, seconded by Mr. Forsythe. Good night, or good evening, Rick, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. So we, network switches are the devices on which the entire everything runs. We have standardized on Juniper. Those run the network throughout. I found out about a year ago, they normally try to be good about getting us this information out ahead of time so we can plan, just as we are doing here. But the switches, the majority of the switches that we are now using are going end of service in June of 2024. So what Juniper has teamed with a partner and given us amazing pricing. It's like over half off their value to replace, and this contract replaces every switch in the fleet. They would deliver those switches this year and allow us to pay for that with no interest for the next 4 years, utilizing an amount that I already had budgeted to replace part of the fleet, because we're always working at, upgrading here and there. So this is a really great opportunity that they're giving us to be able to do it all at once. Along with this, they're including some special management software that's going to really help us diagnose issues and keep the network, and therefore all of you, healthy and happy. So that is the bulk of what the contract is about.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
So, welcome, Amy. I have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with New York State Defenders Association for the Public Defender Case Management System. Moved by Tony Arquette, seconded by Mr. Forsythe. Go ahead, Amy.
Good evening. The Public Defender Case Management System is the computer program that our offices use, Public Defender, Conflict Defender's Office, for our client information, conflict checking, etc. This is to sign a contract for this year into August of 2022. We've been using this program for many years, and we're asking for approval to sign another contract.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Thank you, Amy. Next up, we have Vacancy Review Committee, Mrs. Doyle.
Thank you. So we have 6 departments that were reviewed at our Vacancy Review Committee on July 13th. You will see this month 2 abolish and create requests, 1 create and fill, and 9 straight fills from positions that were already existing. So on this committee tonight, you're going to see 3 of those departments. You'll see 1 on the later agenda for services, and then 2 on finance. I'd like to keep you informed of how many total vacant positions there are. And at the beginning of July, that number was 59 of 808 positions budgeted. That's approximately 7%. Also, with the board's support, I have created throughout COVID a total of 43 temporary positions. Now, as you'll recall, those are 3-month positions maximum, but they help with a number of things, whether it be folks on leave or retiring or out of the office for a significant period of time so that operations can continue. If you have any questions about which departments those are in, please feel free to ask. I can give you the totals and titles if you'd like. The fill rate for this month, immediate, where it was 72%, 14%, and this is a summary of all the positions since January. 14% for 30 days, 1% for 60 days, 3% for 90 days, and 10% for either held or withdrawn. And just as a reminder, next month, I will be providing to you the annual report on vacancies in keeping with the reinstitution of the committee. Each August, if you recall, I give you those summaries and statistics associated. And I can just start by mentioning that we should end up right around our average. Right now we're at 145 positions requested, and our 5-year average is anywhere between 155 to 165. Last year we dipped down to 138, but I'll give you more details next month. Any questions before we start the departments? Okay, the first up is probation. I believe Tim is with us.
I am with you. I'm not sure if you can hear me. I know you can't see me. I'm getting an error that says I cannot start my video.
We can hear you, Tim.
Okay. I'm not sure why my camera's not working. hold on.
There you are.
There I am. So, request is based on a 35-plus year employee retiring. The urgency of filling the position with the court opening up, back up, we're getting inundated with paperwork coming from court and going to court. So the sooner we can fill it, the better. I've got a very young staff now based on retirees for the past few years. So the quicker, the better.
Questions for Tim? Okay, thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Amy coming back in.
Whoops. There we go. For some reason, my video feed is not as good as Mr. Johnson's and Mr. LePage. So we're asking to fill an attorney position. This attorney position handles both criminal and family matters. The attorney that left our office handled a significant amount of family court as well as some of our larger local criminal courts. You did approve creating and filling a new position for just criminal court matters, but this position is one of our original 4 positions and would handle everything essentially. So I'm asking if you would approve filling that position. And I can second what Mr. LePage said with all the courts reopening. It's been pretty busy. Thank you.
Questions for Amy? Okay, thank you, Amy.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Next up is emergency services.
This is for a full-time position. We are expecting a recent retirement at the 27th of August. His last day of work will be the 26th. The department's very short as it is now, so I'm asking for an immediate fill. I'd like to get somebody, do some interviews, get somebody close to when the retirement comes official, that we can bring them in and start doing training on them. Loosen the burden that we currently have with vacations and people in and out.
Questions for Matt? Okay. And last is purchasing. Dylan will present on an abolish and create.
So as Bruce said, this is abolish and create. Recently, we had our keyboard specialist in the purchasing department resign. And ever since the retirement of Mike Cunningham, who is the director of the department, I've taken over and talked to Ruth about how we can best move the purchasing department along and how we can best serve the county. So with the resignation of the keyboard specialist, we're looking at a purchasing clerk. This position would expand some duties, including contract management in the sense of tracking deadlines, making sure our terms are current on all of our contract, that notification is provided in a timely manner, and making sure that the purchasing policy and the laws governing the purchasing department are being followed in the proper thresholds. This will also create a better opportunity for succession planning and backup of duties with the assistant purchasing agent, which is the only position that's actually physically included down in the department at this time. It's myself, it's the assistant purchasing agent, and hopefully this purchasing clerk. So we're experiencing some issues in terms of office coverage right now, only one person down there. And because of that, if there's no objection, I would like to start advertising now for the position so we can make sure that we are providing adequate office presence, especially coming into budget and high availability decreasing.
Questions for Dylan? Kevin.
Dylan, who would this person report to?
Me.
Thank you.
Other questions for Dylan? Okay, thank you, Dylan.
Thank you.
And that concludes our vacancy for this meeting.
Committee reports, agriculture and farmland.
Into reports, but not report, and then next meeting will not be until Thursday.
Alternative to incarceration board, Mr. Burke.
There's nothing new to report.
Board of trustees for Supreme Court Library, Ms. Bianco.
We met last month and the report is on file and it changed June of 2019 to 21.
Thank you. Emergency services, we have not had another emergency services since the last time that I reported. We have one in August. Okay, is it in August or the end of this month? The next meeting. So then on to Environmental Management Council, Mr. Minute.
We always take 1 month, a year off, and we put our June meeting off, so we'll be meeting on Wednesday from 6 to 8, and we'll report out at our next meeting.
Okay. Fire advisory board, Mr. Denise.
I have nothing to report. I do expect that, Mayor's going to be staying with us.
Okay. So Inter-County Legislative Committee, I had a discussion with Chairman Sheridan about logistics of these meetings. They now provide a Zoom opportunity for going in person, and you can get the meeting minutes later if you need to. I think we're going to host each year, as is our duty as part of it. But I think that the bulk of stuff, because you're going down to Fulton County and you go and you have lunch and the meeting lasts 20 minutes or so, and you get a little, and it's, 57 cents a mile each way and all kinds of other costs. So I'm gonna limit how many times I actually go in person and do more of it by Zoom. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
We had a discussion, you and I here some time ago, about how membership of this committee, or on this committee, serves St. Lawrence County. And I asked you to give me one example of how it has served St. Lawrence County.
I do get a report of all the legislative things that all the other counties are working on. Sometimes they have pieces of information that I'm able to get, that I give to Ruth regarding how they're working on, like the most interesting thing that I found was when everybody was working on Wi-Fi and the problems we had going from where we are at 3G, and how the legislation changed, and all of a sudden we went from trying to get to 4G, which is maybe possible for us up here, and they just cut all the money and said everything would be 5G. So informational wise, we do get, I think, a fair amount, don't you, Ruth, from the different counties. I don't think it serves St. Lawrence County or its constituents for me to go travel and walk through a field of flowers just to see them. I can see the pictures of where they go. It serves people just fine. If I don't go in person, it doesn't cost anybody any extra money, because we're not paying for lunch and travel and all of that. For them to come here to see us, if they want to come here to see what we're doing with fishing or the trails or something like that, I think that would be good. But I understand your concern, and that's why I kind of talked to Chairman Sheridan, and we agreed that I would not travel for these things because the information doesn't cost us anything to get it. It doesn't cost us anything to belong to it. The money is really only spent if I start going all over the state to look at things.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Are all the counties members of this, or would we be odd man out if we were?
There are many counties that don't go to different things. Some of them only come, some of them didn't even come to the Zoom during COVID. It's basically a core piece of the counties around Saratoga that I noticed they go to everything because they're, just a little bit away or they live nearby. But in every, like when it was our turn to chair the meeting this year, they didn't even have an agenda. They were just gonna have like, let's all get on a Zoom meeting and kind of talk about the current events in our county. And we talked about it and decided that if there's no agenda to go over, that people had a lot of stuff to do. And I think that a lot of it is there's a lot of catch up from COVID, and I'm, I guess, aware of how much money it costs when I started looking at what it would be to go 178 miles one way. You're gonna be gone for the whole day, you're gonna have breakfast, you're gonna have, you know what I mean? So I'm trying to get all the information I can and spend as little money as possible.
Thank you.
Mr. Akers?
So I think it is valuable. I think it has great potential. If you have your thing here, you'll look at your map of, on page 38, map of the state, people that are on this intercounty are St. Lawrence, Franklin, Clinton, Essex, Hamilton, Warren, Washington, and Fulton. I don't know, is Saratoga part of it too?
Every county in the state is, this is NICEC.
I thought you were talking about the intercounty. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
So
But
the
intercounty
intercounty,
is, this is not intercounty, this is NICEC.
I know this is NICEC. I'm pointing out the counties that are in the intercounty.
Right.
So what I'm saying is that in the intercounty, that we have similar interests. The biggest one is that all those counties are part of the Adirondack Park. And because a large part of the county is made up of the Adirondack Park, we have a vested interest as a regional focus that we can represent, come together, all those counties, which I don't know, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9 counties, that we can present a unified position that the St. Lawrence County can benefit. The other thing is, these counties actually have a large makeup of the rural prisons in New York State. Those are another thing. And another function is because of our rural environment, we need more money to maintain our roads. So there are vested interests. I think that this can be exploited. I understand about not spending money and traveling to consume is very good work. But I think that it has a potential that we have not utilized.
I think it's valuable, but when you, during COVID, when you went to the meetings, I mean, I save everything that we talk about, they don't go there. They just, we can talk about it later, but that's not their focus. Their focus is not the DEC. Their focus is, you know, like, if you, where are you gonna put your towers, where the funding's coming for towers and stuff like that. But I think that you can glean that from the meetings without going to Fulton County to talk about it.
Certainly, my point is that I think that it hasn't reached its potential, that it has great potential, best
I
interest.
think it's a great.
We all have, that those fronts that I just mentioned, those are just the small part of it, or actually probably maybe the majority, particularly the park. And I think as a block that we could promote ourselves to the legislators down in Albany, that this is where we're coming from, not just St. Lawrence County, say having an issue, whether it's by the mines in the Adirondack Park or whatever else. The 7, 8, or 9 counties all together, as a unified front. Yeah.
Next up, the jury board, Mr. Sheridan.
Your word is not bad.
Planning board, Mr. Fang.
I'll mention a number of things that happened. Most of the things that I'm speaking about have been our referrals returned for local action. There was 2 subdivisions of town, 3 subdivisions of town of Lawrence and Morristown. Was it 2 area variances and 1 site plan approved. Plus, probably one of the most controversial things they talked about at the planning board meeting is the new Dollar General on Route 37, just as you're coming in to where that motel was in that area in Morristown. They're worried about the speed limit. Basically, it was a big discussion that they're going to change the speed limit. And of course, I don't think that we have much authority over that Department of Transportation, DOT, and they're going to determine, but we certainly want to recognize the fact that we're worried about the speed limit in that area. A number of board members are. Ogdensburg, there was a question on area variance for the Taco Bell sign. In Potsdam, there was a site plan approval and a sign permit on Raymond Street, where we're talking about our community arts center. In Rome, there was 2 subdivision approvals for changing 1 parcel into 2 parcels. Messina, there was on 191 North Main Street, and open for a tap room and bottle shop. Also, there was a site plan on Randall Drive that was a concern because it was close to Route 37. But I shouldn't say it was really a concern, it was just a reason we had to look at it. And I guess that basically covers it. If anybody's got any questions on those. And of course, our county planner certainly talked at the beginning of the meeting on our lead.
Any questions? Seeing none. Any old business? Any new business? Our executive session will be combined with services, so if there's no further business, we will adjourn.
The Services Committee of St. Lawrence County for Monday, July 19th. And I would entertain a approval of the agenda by Mr. Perkins, second by Mr. Smithers. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. I'd entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes of June 14th. By Mr. Denisha, seconded by Mr. Perkins. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. We'll move directly to resolutions. The first one from Community Services, modifying the 2021 budget for community services for funding received from New York State Office of Mental Health as pass-through funding to approved agencies. Is there a motion? By Mr. Smithers, second by Ms. Kerr. Jay, turn it over to you.
Good evening. So several weeks ago, we received a revised state aid letter from OMH that had increases in funding for salary enhancements. So this resolution outlines those increases from the recent state aid letter for the downstream providers.
Any questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Jay, says you have a update on the clinics.
Yes. So if you look at the no-show rates for the month of June, there was a 20% spike in the mental health side of our operations. But if you look at in the very bottom right-hand corner of the first page, the mental health weighted face-to-face visits as an average remained at 74.3. Last month, it was 75.4. They both meet the expectations of 72% face-to-face a month. So the explanation for that, even though we had a 20% spike in no-shows, is that the counselors, to their credit, The counselors, to their credit, if they have a no-show, then they have a list that they keep of people who need sooner appointments, and they go ahead and try to make those calls and get those people into the open slots. Now, howbeit, it might not be a 45-minute session. A lot of times it might be a 30-minute session or a 20-minute session, but we're still, trying to capture some of that time for face-to-face billable hours. In terms of the clinic counselor visit averages, it was pretty flat. It was 5.77. Last month it was 5.43, down a little bit, but again, could be reflective of the no-show rate in the mental health side. If you go to the second page, the first prescriber, employee number 8140, that individual saw 5.88 visits per 7 hours. And the reason for that is that prescriber has moved to Arizona, and she is only bridging scripts for the stable people, and having telephonic contact. And then for the people who aren't stable, she is still, providing telepractice or telemental health visits. But that's why those numbers drop. She was typically around, 9 visits per 7 hours prior to her departure to Arizona. We do have someone slated to fill that position. They have recently graduated. They did pass the exam, and now they're working on getting their licensure with New York State. And when that occurs, then we'll bring that person on and we'll sever the relationship with this current provider. If you look back on the first page again, if you notice the mental health clinicians, we typically have 5. We had 2 that chose to leave the agency, so that put us down to 3. In late June, we did hire a 4th clinician. So she's onboarding and trying to build up her caseload. And that person, along with a child and family support team therapist who wants to relocate into the clinic rather than doing community-based services, because she specializes in trauma work, and she felt that her skills would be better used in clinic. So she's transitioning away from the child and family support team. So the new clinician, along with the one that's transferring out of the child and family support team, will hopefully, alleviate the waiting list. In terms of services provided, we had a spike in March, and now it's back down a little bit, but still higher than the previous months in terms of the number of individuals served and the number of services. And the billing and paid percentages remains pretty flat, but we remain around 88%, 89% reimbursement. Are there any questions?
Jay, how is the new software program coming in, the new billing program? Are we into it yet or not?
They have yet to upload it into our system. So we are kind of behind in what we originally anticipated. We did had to revise the contract several times. So, they finally got it right. We did receive an invoice today for the onboarding and the startup, so we'll get that paid. And so hopefully in the next week or so, we will have that uploaded into our system so we can at least start looking at it and kind of becoming familiar with it.
Thank you.
Mr. Reed?
Jay, I'm looking at the waiting list there for the Canton Addiction Services group there, and you've got 8 people that are waiting for services. But then I look over on the first page for the Addiction Services visits for 7 hours, and it looks like you're averaging about 5 visits, just a little over 5 a day. Are the visits for a half an hour, or do they take up 45 minutes plus write-up time? I mean, can you give us an idea per visit, how much time that takes up?
Sure. So unlike the mental health side, for the addiction side, they like those services to be between 45 minutes and an hour. So what the advantage that we have on the mental health side is we can do 45-minute sessions back to back to back. On the chemical dependency side, we have difficulty doing that because of the expectation of OASIS.
Well, that's it. The only thing I look at it is, if there was some room for improvement there, particularly if we got 8 people that are waiting for services that are looking to stop using or whatever, that would be important that they didn't have to wait. So if we could improve that somehow, that's why I wanted to know time for a visit. So you've answered that. Well, thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, Jay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you and good evening.
Good evening to you too. We'll move on to public health. The first resolution is proclaiming August as National Immunization Awareness Month. The motion by Mr. Smithers, second by Ms. Terminelli. Jolene, go ahead.
So August is, we would like to proclaim Immunization Awareness Month, and this is even more important now as we are trying to get the children vaccinated to go back to schools with normal immunizations on top of the COVID vaccine.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. The second resolution is authorizing the chair to sign a contract extension with Health Research Incorporated, the New York State Department of Health, for epidemiology and laboratory capacity for COVID enhanced detection. Is there a motion by Mr. Sheridan, seconded by Ms. Byrne and Mr. Perkins? Go ahead, Jolie.
So this is a supplemental award to the COVID ELC grant that we received last year. It's based off from the county population along with our percentage of COVID-19 cases. So it extends our original contract through March 31st of 2023 and is for $392,994.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Akers?
So Jolene, it's in the fourth whereas, says the majority of these funds will continue to be used for new personnel to enhance efforts for case and contact investigations, vaccination planning. Would these employees be permanent employees, or they would only be there for as long as the grant is funded?
So this grant can only be used for new personnel. So we have hired some temporary ones and we are still looking to hire temporary staff. It can also be used for overtime for current staff, but they are temporary for this grant.
What's that?
Yeah, for that.
Okay. Anyone else? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. The next resolution is modifying the 2021 budget for Public Health Department for the COVID-19 response. Is there a motion? By Mr. Denisha, seconded by Mr. Smithers. Jolene?
So this is for the original ELC grant that I just mentioned, and it is essentially catching our budget within Munis up to where the grant is. We ended up spending more on overtime than we did on some of the other lines, not knowing exactly where items were going to go. So this is just doing the budget modification to put more into overtime.
Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. The next resolution is authorizing the chair to sign contracts with area K-12 public and private schools for COVID-19 screening testing programs. Is there a motion by Mr. Denisha, second by Mr. Burke? Jolene?
Thank you. So this grant, or this is for a new potential program grant to do screening testing in public and private schools starting this fall and running through the end of the school year through next July. It does include summer school as well. It will allow us to contract with all of the schools to either give them the testing equipment or to allow them to purchase their own testing equipment, supplies, personnel, and allow us to pass the money through to them for the to keep their schools open safely. There is oversight with this with the state. We are required to turn in monthly work plans. It's part of a grant that is the next resolution.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Akers?
So Jolene, on the radio on the way in tonight, it was a news report talking about there's going to be a recommendation, I think on the federal level, for masking of anybody basically over the age of 2 to 12, anybody that's unvaccinated to be wearing masks in school. What is coming out of New York and locally here?
So that was the American Academy of Pediatrics that put out the recommendation that anybody in school, regardless of vaccination status, due to the fact that not everybody in a school can be vaccinated, wear a mask to protect, especially with the Delta variant being the most prevalent one now. New York State is still evaluating what the CDC had put out about 10 days ago. They have not made any recommendations yet. Most likely, they will be going towards at least mandating screening testing for any staff, faculty that are not vaccinated on a weekly basis.
Thank you.
Mr. Rinaldi?
Jolene, on the testing that would be upcoming under this resolution, the possibility of it upcoming, would that expedite testing results to come back sooner? I know, last year if a kid had the sniffles, oftentimes they were out for 10 days. Are they still going to have to quarantine for the 10 days? Do you know that? And would this be rapid testing for vaccinated individuals so that they didn't have to be out of school for as long?
So this resolution is for what's called screening testing, not for symptomatic. So the symptomatic ones could potentially use the same testing programs, but you wouldn't necessarily want to have a symptomatic individual come to school just to be part of a screening testing program. This program is going to be similar to what the colleges have been doing all along with getting testing, and same thing with the nursing homes, having to do like once a week testing, twice a week testing. It just depends on what the parameters are set for by the state. For the school kids, we do now have the Rheonics machines in the county. So within our county, our testing for anything that's kept in county is coming back within 24 hours for results.
Okay. Anyone else? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. The next resolution is authorizing the chair to sign contracts with medical facilities and vendors for school screening testing. Is there a motion to move this? By Ms. Curran, seconded by Mr. Fay. Jolene?
Okay, sorry, I had a different one next. Just get to that one.
We missed one, Joe. Yep.
I'm sorry, I skipped one. Why don't we use this one while we've got it, and we'll go back to the one I skipped.
I can do that. So this one is to contract for that same grant with the area medical facilities or local, like regional facilities to do testing. We still, like I said, are not sure exactly what the state is going to have, but we are trying to get as a requirement, but we are trying to get all of our work plans ready and in place. So that way, once the school starts, we're ready to go and we won't delay any of the in-person instruction. So we would like to contract with local, with medical facilities and vendors to obtain the materials and process the screening tests, including laboratory services that will be performed at the public and private schools.
Any discussion or any comment? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. We'll back up one. A resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with Health Research Incorporated, HRI, for epidemiology and laboratory capacity reopening schools. Is there a motion? By Mr. Burke, second by Ms. Curran, Ms. Terminelli. Jolene?
So we have been awarded $3.4 million to focus on having the necessary resources to implement a COVID-19 screening testing program in the public and private schools. This funding will be used for the coordination, management, and technical assistance, monitoring everything that goes around with a screening program for any of the schools. And with this, we do have that monthly oversight to the State Department of Health. For schools, if it's not mandated, it will be optional for the schools to opt in or opt out to participate in it, anything that the state mandates. So this program will cover for costs associated with a screening program at the schools.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Akers?
Could you talk again about the amount of money that being awarded? You said million, 3 million? Is that what you said?
Yes.
3 million what?
It's $3,407,799.
That's a change. Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. The next resolution is authorizing the chair to sign a contract for the Early Intervention Administration Program for Public Health. Is there a motion to move? By Mr. Perkins, seconded by Mr. Smithers and Ms. Curran. Jolene?
So this is for our Early Intervention Administration Program. It is funded through a grant, and this grant will start October 1st and will run for 5 years with an annual amount of $63,080. And we have the responsibility through our Early Intervention Program to provide services. It's birth through 3 years that need any type of therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy within the county.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. The next resolution is authorizing the chair to sign a contract with Glens Falls Hospital for morgue and laboratory services. Motion by Ms. Curran, seconded by Mr. Smithers. Jolene?
So this resolution would allow us to contract with Glens Falls Hospital, who has agreed to receive cases from our county when our current pathologist is unavailable. We do have a contract pathologist who travels between 2 different facilities. And this is one of the newer ones that they are traveling to when we have need to go outside of the county.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I have one. Can you tell us, just to refresh our memories, who else we have contractual agreements with for performing postmortems and laboratory services?
So we have an agreement with Dr. Sikorica as a pathologist. He is one that uses Glens Falls Hospital. He also uses Onondaga Medical Facility. We also have an agreement with Monroe County Medical Examiner, and then a combination. It's Twin Tiers Pathology provides the pathologist, and it's in Rensselaer. The morgue for that one is in Rensselaer Falls.
Okay, so we have
Or
three.
not Rensselaer Falls, Rensselaer County. We're a little bit further away, but that's where ours are.
3, is that correct? Or just 2?
We have Dr. Sikorica, who has 2 different facilities that he goes to, and then we have Monroe County, and then Twin Tiers, and I'm blanking on the name of their morgue, but it's in Rensselaer County. We have one separate for each one, but it's one pathologist, one morgue there.
Okay, so has the Dr. Sikorica stopped doing posts in Syracuse?
He is rarely doing in Syracuse. He does not prefer that facility anymore. Same thing within our county. Dr. Livingstone will only perform
autopsies now at Camp Potsdam Hospital. So they do have their preferences for what facilities they like.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Jolene. Moving along to the next one, is authorizing the chair to sign a contract extension for the lead poisoning prevention program grant. Moved by Mr. Smithers, seconded by Mr. Burke. Go ahead, Jolene.
So this is for a grant that actually was extended starting last October 1st, 2020, and it runs through September 30th, 2021. The state was waiting on the Department of Health was waiting on the state budget to pass. So this will fund our last year of the contract for all of our lead poisoning prevention work with $35,829.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. The next is authorizing the chair to sign a contract with Lamar Advertising for promoting the Hepatitis A campaign. Motion by Mr. Perkins, seconded by Ms. Curran. Go ahead, Jolene.
We are now starting to re-pick up all of the work that we had been working on prior to COVID, along with doing all of our COVID activities. And one of the items for our immunization awareness program is doing a hepatitis A campaign. So we are looking to Contract with Lamar to put up billboards around the importance of hepatitis A and the vaccine that goes with it.
Mr. Burke.
Jolene, is there a high incidence of hepatitis? I mean, we hear a lot about the B and the C, but is there a high incidence of the hepatitis A?
So when we first started the work on this campaign last year, there were cases, and you could see it coming up through the counties up to ours. Thankfully, we were able to stop it. We only had a couple of additional cases last January from the outbreak, but it is spread relatively easily. With people taking fewer COVID precautions, we are starting to see more diseases related to the lack of hand washing. So one of the reasons we think that hepatitis A, like we had that drop off, is one, because we had COVID, everybody was staying at home, but two, people started washing their hands more. Hepatitis A is really a fecal oral transmission, and with more people starting to go out and go back to some of their pre-pandemic habits, we want to get ahead of any potential other increases of hepatitis A in the county.
Any questions? Comment? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Jolene, anything else?
I think that's all that I think 10 is good for tonight.
Okay. Thank you very much. The next is for the Office of the Aging, modifying the 2021 budget for Office for the Aging to receive New York State Office for the Aging funding from the American Rescue Plan for St. Lawrence County. Is there a motion by Mr. Denisha, seconded by Ms. Curran? Andrea.
Hello. I'm on. All right. Thank you very much. So this one is certainly, as you can see, it's a great amount of money for us. It's modifying our 2021 budget to receive funding from the American Rescue Plan. So we are looking at a variety of ways in which to use this. It rolls over for 3 years. And, particularly nutrition, as you all know, our nutrition costs, certainly went way up. We had about a 35 to 40% increase in clientele for our home delivered meals during COVID. And many of them have still stayed on. They met the qualifications for home delivered meals. So we went from 16 home delivered meal routes to currently we have 21 and quite a large wait list. So this money will really help us to alleviate those issues.
Any questions, any comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Andrea, unless there's something else, we're all set.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Moving along to the next resolution. It's a social services resolution authorizing the chair to sign a memorandum of understanding with Maximizing Independent Living Choices. Is there a motion by Mr. Perkins, seconded by Ms. Kerr? Cindy, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. So this resolution is to support long-term services and supports and will enable older adults and individuals of all ages with disabilities to return to and remain in their homes and within their own communities. So with this resolution, we've had a long-term collaboration between the Department of Social Services, including the Office of the Aging and the Maximizing Independent Living Choices, as we call MILC. So this memorandum is to help us support that continued collaboration. And in addition to that, they are also kind of partnering with us in our efforts to support the ERAP in helping our community members assess that program and work through those applications. So this is a really great resolution to continue that collaboration.
Any questions, any comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Cindy, I see now where we're going to give an explanation, I guess, and comments about the statistical information that we received prior to the meeting. So go right ahead.
Yeah, so I am going to share my screen. So as I think a lot of us say, just bear with me so I can make sure that get this up and figure that out.
Okay, we have it.
Okay, you have it?
Yes.
Okay, let me move my array of people. Okay, so as we begin to work through this data, I first just want to say that we are super excited to have this data to present. We've been working diligently on this for quite a few months. It's been a true group effort. Myself, Ruth, Dylan, the grade A supervisors and administrative assistants over in social services, as well as many, many other staff that have participated. I'm going to do my best to present this information. This information is basically generated from a lot of the questions that as the board have asked in the past, and also from, just some interests that have been noted, throughout our process of over the last year. So, kind of what I'm asking for, because again, like I said, we are super excited. I'm asking for, to kind of let me walk you through this presentation, kind of talk through the slides with details, but as quickly as I can. But I'm also looking for your feedback. I'm very interested, as I think, Ruth and Dylan and the staff are as well, as to what you think about the presentation, how you feel about the information that's going to be, brought up here tonight, and kind of what you think the parts that you like are parts that you feel you may like some additional clarification. So again, we are really open to your feedback, and I really look forward to it. So I am going to start going through this. And again, like I said, it's quite a bit here, but I'll try to do it as quickly as I can. So when we look at this first block, the first portion of this data is, we're going to start with Child Protective Services. So, sorry about that. So this first data point talks about all of our cases. So I just kind of want to talk a little bit about how this begins. So referrals come into Child Protective Services through the New York State Registry. So they are open 24/7. They take calls, and then they delineate them out to whatever county, is geared towards that specific case. So then the case comes into our unit. And right now, I'm looking at this data, you'll see that we received a total of, in June, 163 new calls. And out of that 163 calls, there were 414 children involved in those cases. So our average cases added per month stays about 163, and the average children are about a little over 400 per month based on these calls. So when we go down to the next area, and we're talking still about Child Protective Services, then we want to. Sure.
I have a question regarding that previously covered material. Mr. Forsythe?
Cynthia, thank you. Just a question. Are these all separate calls, separate cases, and are these separate children? Or could these be counted twice?
Sure, that's a good question. So what this is showing is that we'll receive 163 calls, and out of those 163 calls, it pertains to 414 children. So there might be a family that might have multiple children.
But they wouldn't be counted twice. Two different people couldn't call on the 163 call. What's that?
So that's where we get down to different cases. And that's kind of further down in the presentation where I'm going to talk a little bit about how it separates out.
Okay.
And how.
So I think what we're trying to get at is whether or not any of these 163 cases involve some of the same children multiple times.
So let me just scroll down. I'm just gonna kind of step ahead a little bit because I have a slide that will provide that to you.
Okay.
Okay, so right here when we're looking at, so right here, let me just find my notes. Okay, so right here when we're looking at the total cases called in, so right now we have a total of 731 cases. So we've had, and this is where you see the 163 cases that just came in June. Those are the new cases. Of those cases, 108 of them have been closed. And now we have what are called merged cases and secondary cases. So the definition for a merged case, these cases can represent the same family. So for example, if we end up getting 2 calls on the same family, we can merge them into one case. So that then, out of that 163, there might be some merged cases in that number. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, and
yes.
And then if you're looking at the secondary cases, what is secondary cases is, say, for example, a call comes into the New York State Registry for Jefferson County. So Jefferson County gets the call, but then they realize in looking for the family that the family actually now, resides in St. Lawrence County. So St. Lawrence County then takes over that case, but those secondary cases are not counted in our 163 added cases. That's not part of that 163 because Jefferson County still counts it as one of their initial new cases. And then it slides over to the county where the family or the child resides at that time.
What's the rationale behind that?
Well, I think that there's just a lot of movement. I think people are transitioning a lot and moving a lot. So, somebody might think that the person, the last address that they had may have been Jefferson County when it came to New York State. And then when it came into Jefferson County and they researched it, found that the family or the child actually is now residing in St. Lawrence County or Franklin County or Lewis County.
Okay. Ms. Terminelli has a question.
Just to make sure I understand this correct, the 108 that are closed, is that 108 out of the 163 added cases, or is that 108 separate cases that are closed?
So that would be, the staff have 60 days to close a case. And we all know that we've had some, issues with getting our cases closed within the 60 days. So total right now we have the 731 cases that are open. But in the month of June, we closed 108 cases. So it's hard, it's not part of the 163 because those are new. So does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Okay.
Any others?
Go back up.
Gore?
Go back up. She can go back up now and
Yeah.
continue on.
And
Yeah,
I know
go
it's a
ahead.
lot, and that's why I asked that, you know, write things down if you need to, and then we can, you know, work through, you know, how you guys see this data, because we may, you know, you're gonna see it a little different than we do. So, okay, so moving on. So now we're gonna look at our indicated, unfounded and FAR cases, and then we're gonna look at the average of those. So let me kind of explain to you what that is. So an indicated, of course, would be a case that, you know, came through when we found that there was, you know, some type of abuse. There was enough evidence to say, yes, you know, this case is going to be indicated and it's going to be found, so that we're going to take the case. We have enough information to actually take the case. So some cases we work through and investigate. We just can't find that enough evidence to have it indicated or founded. Therefore, it's unfounded. Now you'll see that 39% this month of our cases are FAR cases. So I kind of just want to make sure that people understand what FAR stands for. So FAR stands for Family Assessment Response. And this family response is a tool used to process and assess Child Protective Service reports that do not generate a finding of indicated or unfounded. It is more family-centered. It is strength-based and trauma-informed. So the FAR response actually was a tool specifically highlighted throughout New York State during COVID, in the addition of our ed neglect concerns. So it's more on cases where, you know, we find that if we can go in and really push, you know, have FAR go in and do some assessments and work with the families, you know, we can kind of work beyond a case, you know, becoming indicated or anything like that. It just hasn't reached to that level. So as you can see right now, we have 50% unfounded. 11% of our cases go through our Child Protective Services to be indicated, and 39% right now are FAR cases. So overall, our averages have been 56 unfounded, which is great, 21% indicated overall, and then 23% of them average out to be our FAR cases.
Ms. Terminelli?
Sorry, so can, what dates or months do these two pie chart kind of things, what do they cover? And is this?
So we are covering June. We're gonna, some of this information is gonna end up being lagged a little bit. We're gonna work on that, but sometime, I think in order for us to get really accurate information to you, it's gonna have to lag a little bit.
So the one on the left is June, and the average, would that be, what's that?
2021.
2021. Thank you.
Correct. Yep. Okay, are we good so far?
We're good so far.
Okay. So this next slide shows our safety checks completed. This is one of the OCFS stats that we get per month. We get the safety checks, we get our number of caseloads and kind of where we average to the state with that. And then we also get rated on our percentage of cases that are overdue for Child Protective Services. So what we wanted to do was really highlight this one right now about our safety checks, because we have made drastic improvements in this area. So right now, for the month of June, we are at 90% of our completed safety checks on time. That's within 7 days. So we are above the average. So we're super excited. Our new grade A supervisor, Rebecca Deemer, has really taken, taken these three statistics very seriously, and she's very excited to move St. Lawrence County up to the higher ranks of the percentage. So right now we're in the medium for our safety checks. We were in the lower brackets. So kudos to her. She's been really working with her staff to really work on these as an overall goal. So, it's just been fantastic. So we're super, super proud of them because this is really a big deal moving forward.
Mr. Lightfoot?
Mr. Smithers has a question.
Could
Okay.
you just expound on what is a safety check?
So when we receive a call from when a call comes into Child Protective Services, we have 7 days to do a safety check on the child to make sure that that child will be gone in 24 hours. And we do put a safety plan in place, but we have 7 days to get that safety plan into the Connections, which is a database that OCFS uses. So they want to make sure that, you know, that the Child Protective Services has been out to the home, they've checked the home, that child is either safe in that home or that there's a safety plan for that child, you know, for example, whether that child's with a relative or if that child, you know, depending on the safety check has been removed and is in foster care. So we've been having.
Ms. Hager has a question.
Okay.
Ms. Ackerman, that's a phenomenal improvement over a couple of months to go from where we appear to be to 90%. And you mentioned a new supervisor. When I look at average CPS caseload, that hasn't changed.
No.
I think she's going to get to that, Margaret.
Okay, I'm wondering, okay, I'll wait and ask.
If you have a question regarding what she's already covered,
Yes,
that would be appropriate.
well, thank you. You mentioned that it was because of this supervisor. Has the addition of caseworkers contributed to that, or is this something that this person's made a priority?
She has definitely made it a priority. You know, she's meeting with her staff all the time. She's talking with them all the time. She's working them through all these processes and really focusing on, you know, getting these safety checks done and completed. Now, we were getting them completed. We were just having issues getting them into Connections on time. So again, if it's not documented in the system, you know, it doesn't count. So he's really working with the staff to help them to, you know, get their documentation in and get it completed on time. Because, you know, they're doing the work. So we say, get the credit for doing the work. It's just getting that information into the system. So she's focusing on, you know, working with them, help them, you know, get their documentation completed on time as well.
That's great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you have one? Mr. Forsythe has a question.
Okay.
The 62% roughly that we were averaging back in March, how long had that average been so far below the state average? The last year or more?
I know that at least since I've been here, since last August, it had been down, you know, we were probably 2 or 3 from the bottom, kind of, you know, waving a little bit with a couple other counties, but it had been pretty consistently low. So this is a drastic improvement, and kudos, you know, to the staff and to their supervisor.
We more prioritize it then.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Terminelli had a follow-up.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you, and I appreciate the improvement on that, and that we are above the state average. And not to focus on any negative at all, but the 15, I just look at those as 15 individuals. Why, have you been able to ascertain why we have 15 kiddos out there that haven't had their safety checks either completed or entered on time?
I can't answer that question right now, but I can get that information for you. I know that we are, you know, Rebecca is on top of it. So I'm sure that she can provide us with that information.
Thank you, and congratulations on the improvement.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Please proceed.
Okay. Okay, so this slide shows our average CPS caseload. So right now we are currently at 28 cases average, you know, with the staff. As you'll see, as we move down through the slides and we start looking at each individual caseload, you'll see that they vary, and I will explain at that time why. But right now the average is 28. And again, we were really looking to kind of reach that 12 to 15, per the recommendations for the CPS caseload. So we're going to make sure we get this information for you every month so you can see, hopefully as our new staff come out through training, how, those caseloads will start to drop. Is there any questions on that one?
I don't see any.
Okay. So this is a slide we had talked about before with the total caseloads and kind of how we break them down. So I don't know if there was any other questions on this one.
Mr. Perkins does. I just want to make an observation. We had 163 new cases. We closed 108 cases. So we have 55 additional new cases. Am I reading that correctly?
No, so the 55 would be merged cases. So those would be out of the 163 calls that we have got in, and with our total of 731 cases, 57 of those are merged cases. So 57 of those were probably or would be, two different calls that we received on the same family. If we received those calls within a specific time frame, we can merge that case. Sometimes the time frame is too long and we're not able to merge it, but at this time we have 57 that came in within that time frame, so we could merge them into one case.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Proceed, Cynthia.
Okay. So now we start looking at the caseloads per supervisor. So one thing I want to kind of explain again, as you can see, some of the cases are reaching like up to 40 or 45. So what the arrows are demonstrating is, a caseworker may get an increase of 2, like the first square. Let's talk about one caseworker had an increase of 2 cases. One had a decrease of 3 cases, 3 cases, a decrease of 5 cases, and so on. And you'll see that in the first square on your left, that there's a caseworker here that had a decrease of 17 cases. That caseworker has been promoted to a grade B supervisor. So, we are gradually working her caseload down so that she can then transition into her new position. So you're going to see those numbers fluctuate. It varies too, depending on the severity of the case. So there might be somebody who has a few less cases than another caseworker. That would be because they might have some cases that, like I said, are just more severe and just take more time than other cases would. So we do have still some caseworkers with quite a few cases, like this one's up to 45. But what we are trying to do now that we have, I'll move on to these other 2 supervisors, is trying to even them out, spreading them around, evening them out, working on getting the supervisors, out of their caseload so that they can support their group. It's going to take time. Sometimes there's just a lot of history with a case, and it's difficult to move that case when that caseworker has had that case for so long. So we're very sensitive to that. But we are working on that. It's a discussion with Heather Rand and I weekly or more often. So we're just trying to be sensitive to, the families, the children, and the caseworkers is how we're working through this. But you're going to start seeing these numbers even out as well. You might say, for example, this caseworker here has 30 cases and hasn't had any new. So there's times where if the cases are extremely difficult, we'll not give them any new cases so they can work through some of these that maybe are extending the 60-day mark and need to be completed. So we're going to be able to start monitoring all that. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on that.
I just want to make sure I'm reading this right. So these would be 4 different supervisors, and each of them oversees between 5 and 7 employees. Is that the way I'm reading that?
Correct. Yes.
And then the vacant one that seems to have the increase in cases across the board, is that attached to the position that we're going to be looking at tonight on vacancy? No. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. We can figure that out when we get to vacancy. I was just saying with the increase in cases on employees that don't currently have a supervisor and who supervises them in the meantime while there's a vacancy.
Yeah, and that one that we're going to be discussing tonight is going to be in children's services, but we do have a plan for all this moving forward. So we can probably give you more specifics of that later.
Okay.
So the next slide, and we're going to provide you with a slide like this. This one's for Child Protective Services, and we're going to provide one for Children's Services as well. Trying to give you guys an idea of our trainee, of who we have in training, and how long that process takes for them to get through the training until they can actually take on a caseload. So we're hoping this would give you a better visual of what the time frame looks like. So most of our new staff that we've been able to bring in will not be taking on a full caseload or beginning a caseload, until September. So it's going to take a while for this to work through, but then at that time we should start really seeing a change in our caseloads overall. So does anybody have any questions on that one?
No questions.
Okay. So now we're moving down to our Child Protective Services overall with our cases closed. So this kind of gives you an idea of, who, what cases have been closed. Again, this one here was 16 closed. Is that same caseworker that will be transitioning to a grade B supervisor.
No questions.
Great. Okay, now we're going to move on to preventive
Mr. Burke
services.
has a question, John.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Mr. Burke, I think has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jack.
No problem, I raised my hand, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Burke has a question, Cynthia.
Okay.
Cindy, is the information, like the case is closed, is that given to us just as background information, or is that a performance indicator? I guess I'm trying to figure out, it looks like some of these slides are given to have a better understanding of the challenges that you're facing, and that some of the slides also speak to the actual performance of the department. And I guess I'm just wondering what are we learning from the cases closed? Is there significance to that?
Well, that's a good question. So I think it's always good to track our cases closed. Again, there's varied degrees of the case, levels and the severity of the cases and what they involve. Some cases are extremely involved, and we do have certain caseworkers that do work, better with specific cases. They might be more geared towards, a specific type of abuse or a specific type of neglect. So they would be more apt to take a case like that. But I think collecting the data now, and then, as we start working through it and looking at it, again, like this is kind of our first walk through it. And we might find in a few months if there's data here that, is kind of not significant, we might not need to continue with, or we might find something, as you guys start walking, listening and walking through this with me that you might find, might be more helpful. So we were just trying to kind of look at, what area, are the cases, being closed? Is it, a specific group that's geared towards, again, a specific type of abuse? And kind of in a few months, I think we'll have a better idea, if that makes sense.
It does. I guess what I hear you saying, it's kind of background information you're giving us, Cindy, and it might become more relevant as time progresses.
And I would agree with that, and I think that is one of the reasons that was drawn up in such a fashion. Obviously, some cases are more difficult than others. I guess what we would be looking to do, much like we're looking to do on the clinical side of, say, chemical dependency and mental health, is a pattern. If an employee consistently has a high caseload and a low number of cases being closed, then perhaps one would want some explanation for something like that. By the same token, in its infancy, and this is the first time that we've seen it, it's nothing more than we've got so many cases closed. Am I correct in assuming that this would include your fire cases, or is this just indicated cases?
So this is going to be the whole. It's going to be all the cases. It's going to be every case is in that's under that title.
Okay.
So anything under, yes.
All right. Any other questions? No. Go ahead, Cindy.
Okay. Okay, so now we're trying to kind of follow the same pattern through preventive services. So you're gonna try to catch up on my notes here a little bit. Okay. So you're gonna see here under preventive services that, you know, we have a total of 327 children in care, and out of that, we have 157 of them are in, you know, your typical foster care, which would be traditional, special, or exceptional. And then we have 18 children in institutional care. We have 136 children in kinship, which would be family or relative settings. And we now, right now, as of June, the end of June, we had 16 children who are at home on a trial basis. And they are still considered, you know, in foster care, unless they are, you know, returned to parent and, you know, freed to be back home. Does anybody have any questions on that one?
No questions, Cindy.
Okay, great. So here on this graph, we are looking at, and we're going to try to increase these numbers, but we had 9 children that were removed from care in June and 6 children added. So the goal is to continue with our number of children removed to be higher than our children added to care. But you can see it's been, you know, it's hard to determine, but this is where our family first and our you know, focus on preventive care and being proactive and working with these families more can hopefully help these numbers. So does anybody have any questions on that one? On that slide? No?
No questions.
Okay. So these two data points describe our average number of children in care over the years, and then our average days that the children have been in care. So you can see that, you know, at the end of June, we had 333 children in care, and the average day in care was 653. Now, one thing that has been working, you know, well, you know, with our children is we have been doing, we've had some adoptions occur with some of our children that have been in care for a long time. So we are super excited for that to be moving forward. So we're going to start seeing these numbers change as well. And I have a slide that talks specifically about our number of children freed for adoption. So that's further down. So does anybody have any questions on these slides?
Ms. Terminelli does.
Not about the slides themselves, but the data in there. Does either the American Association of Pediatrics or OCFS have a benchmark for how, like, an average number of days that kids should be in care before they're given something that's more permanent?
Oh, there's definitely a criteria for that, and we are over that. And I can get you the specifics on that to read, but we definitely, there's a process that we follow, and with the, when a child comes into care and they have, every 6 months, they have a permanency review. So within, the 6 months and then the next 6 months, you really want to have that child, either parental rights terminated, or the child geared toward a kinship, or something, more permanent or for that child, within that year and a half, and hopefully less than 2 years.
Anyone else? No, that's it, Cindy.
Okay. Okay, so the next slide or the next data point we're looking at is our annual average number of children who are receiving services in their home. So this would be our preventative side. So as of the end of June, we had 212 children who are receiving services in their home. And then you'll see that the average, the next data point over to your right, the average preventive caseload, which shows a caseload of 12. So that's, again, 12 cases where a case can equal anywhere from, 25 to 35. I believe we even still have a caseworker with a caseload up to, towards 40 children. So it just depends on that case and the number of children that are involved in that case. So does anybody have any questions on that slide?
Mr. Perkins.
Yes, Cindy, I guess I'm looking at these numbers, and when we're talking about children, I think we've mentioned it before, it'd be nice to have a breakdown how many families this is, how many it includes. So, if there's 1 or 2 in a family or 4 or 5, if there was any kind of breakdown like that, we could get in the future.
Okay. I can make a note of that because we can look at that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, you can move along.
Okay. So as we did with Child Protective Services, now we're going to look at, excuse me, our cases per supervisor. So like you'll see in this one supervisor has 3 cases. So we are in the process now of looking at each of our units. We do have, excuse me, let's take a drink quick. We are looking at our units and child service, I shouldn't say units, I should say groups, in our preventive foster care. So we are looking at, trying to equal out each group with the caseworkers that we have and the new caseworkers that we've hired and how that's going to work. Because on top of that, we have our home finders unit with our homemakers and our kinship. So as you can see with the statistics right now, it's a little bit uneven, but we are in the process of moving those groups around as we have people that are caseworkers transition into supervisory positions and then backfilling those caseworkers. So this one kind of looks a little bit unbalanced, but we are working at getting these groups more even as they are looking now in Child Protective Services. So again, on this one, you'll see this caseload decrease by 18 over here. As this staff here moves into a supervisory role. And then you'll see, this staff here who is a newer staff, but getting out of the training now to be able to take on some of those, to take on that caseload. So again, it also depends too on, the number of cases that they receive, the number of children that are in each family or any situation, and the severity of the cases. So does anybody have any questions on this?
No questions.
Okay. So again, like we did in Child Protective Services, this is our data points on our training period for caseworkers that will be moving into our children's services. So again, because we hired most of our people around the same time, they will then be coming out of their training around the end of September. So we probably won't see a huge difference until we have these staff kind of up and running and ready to go. As we start adding in more staff, we'll expand this data point so you can see, you know, the rest of the new staff coming in and when they're going to be ready to be able to take on those caseloads. So does anybody have any questions on that data point?
Mr. Akers,
Cynthia, I don't on that, but on the previous slide, I just have a question. Like most of the cases for the individuals in preventative are 20 or less as compared to projective, which some of them have 30 or 40 cases. Is the work that much more intense in preventative versus protective?
Well, if you're looking at, when you're looking at 20 cases, that could involve a lot of children. We aren't measuring this based on the per, right here, it just shows per case. It doesn't show per children. You know, that's probably something that we could look at if you were looking at how many children were on their caseload.
Does the sequence go from your first contact is protective and then you move into preventative?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I think one of the things that perhaps escapes us is the number of unfounded cases that they have. Each of those cases needs to be investigated in order to determine whether or not they are founded or they are unfounded.
Correct.
In this data right here, 163 were founded. Is that correct? On the first page? Would that be correct?
I believe that's correct, yes.
163 cases for June were new cases that were, of the total calls that you got, there actually were founded to be in need of care.
So
11%.
yeah.
First page?
I think so. That data came on the first page.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah, so that was a total, yes.
So is that an accurate statement that of all of the total calls that you got, that 163 warranted attention?
Correct.
Okay.
They all have to, like, say, for example, we had, and we can get that number for you and I can't remember the number right now off the top of my head, but say, for example, we had 250 calls in June. Out of that 250 calls, 163 were added to the caseload. So that means that there was, you know, they were taken, we took them as a case. Now, every call that comes in, we have to investigate. Some of them are very easy to solve, and they can be unfounded very quickly. Others may take a few more days and they're unfounded, where these 163, you know, were indicated and became part of our process.
Okay, thank you for the
And
clarification.
therein lies the difference between the number of cases that you see on the Child Protective Service side and the lesser number of cases you see on the prevent side. Because they're dealing with indicated cases, preventive.
Well, the 163 were actually indicated also. That's what I'm taking, that they were warranted, that they deserved attention, right?
Yes. I'm sorry, Cindy, I'm not trying to do your work.
Oh, no, you're fine. And I think this is good. It's good conversation because I think that everybody looks at the data a little differently. And I think that's good. That's why we were really encouraging the feedback, because we want to make sure that when people look at the data, we're all looking at it the same way. And that can take a little while for us to work through, and that's okay, so.
Mr. Burke has a question?
I think I'm confused now. That first graph that says 163, I thought that was the number of hotline calls that you had to investigate.
Yes.
And that the circle graphs underneath that was a further breakdown of the 163, so that 11% of the 163 required closer scrutiny.
Yeah, or move to preventive.
Right.
Because they were indicated. Yeah, so that number was 12. If you're converting from 11% to what the number was, it's 12.
So the 163 are hotline calls.
Total, yes.
Are
are the calls that came in.
Calls that you had to
Yes.
investigate.
Yes, so they still have to come in, they still have to
Okay,
do all
yes.
the work, right?
So that's a different story.
Yes,
No.
yes,
No,
I'm sorry.
That's okay,
Thank
that's
you.
what we're clarifying.
yes,
Yep,
yeah,
So-
that's correct. That's correct.
so the numbers are indicated 12, unfounded 55, and FAR 42, so that's what make up your circle graph.
Could you say
Yeah.
that number again, please?
Yep, that was 12 indicated, 55 unfounded, and 42 FAR.
Thank you.
And so some may be in the middle, not determined yet, and those will catch up as we see those decisions made.
Thank you.
Keep going, Cindy.
Yes. Sorry about that.
Okay, we're all set, we can move on.
Okay, so again, this was our training period phase for our staff coming into preventative services, or child services. So I don't think there was any questions on that. And then for preventive foster care, these are our closed cases. So again, you'll see, this number here was closed out because it was transferred over to another caseworker. Because this person's becoming a supervisor. I'm sorry, they weren't transferred over. She's closed her cases. This staff as well, closing these cases, moving to be a supervisor as well. So that's where you're going to see those large numbers. So as we start moving through the process and have our staff who are new transitioning out and backfilling, you should see these numbers start to even out as well. That would be the expectation. So does anybody have any questions on that?
No questions?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Perkins has a question.
They're closing 18 cases or 10 cases. How is it that they're closing them? What's enabling them to close those cases versus the smaller numbers that aren't?
So it depends on the case. Like if it's a preventative case and the judges ordered that maybe they just don't need the services anymore. They've met their criterias. They've reached their orders through visitations and things like that. And we've closed their case. It could be an array of things. It could be that a child returned home. There's many, many reasons.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Smithers.
Now, I'm trying to understand how your explanation, this process of this person becoming a supervisor, so all of a sudden, all of their cases are closed. It seems like that's kind of magic, how that happens. All of that person's cases are closed and they become a supervisor. It would seem like there's still some cases that would require service that would be transferred to another caseworker. Can you just go over that so in my mind I can understand that?
So I would have to look at exactly what cases that specific caseworker had, to close them out. And it's something that that caseworker could maybe not have been added any other cases and was able to close those cases out by not having any more added. Where other caseworkers continue to have their cases added, and working on those cases. Well, this one was able to close her cases. And we can check that point because it could be something where, if it was transferred to another caseworker, we were looking at, her cases closing instead of being transferred, that might be something that, we need to look at. To make sure that we have that exactly.
Mr. Arquette has a question.
Actually, Mr. Chair, it's towards you because I believe that what Mr. Smithers was looking for is whether criteria had changed all of a sudden because this person was moving on, right?
I just don't seem to be understanding what Cindy's saying about this person became a supervisor and then all the cases were closed this year.
But that's not.
Well, but I think that Cynthia mentioned that that supervisor could close a case, but in reality, he's closing that case for him, but it's being passed on, or could be being passed on, or passed down to a caseworker.
They were redistributed.
And I think that that's why she would have to look and see what the circumstances of that were, without just giving you a blanket response. Fair enough?
Right.
Not hearing her.
Well, let's get you straightened out then. Like, let's hear about it.
I'll trust that. She's doing that process.
Trust but verify, they say.
Her first comments were they were redistributed to other caseworkers. So they're still active, they're still active.
So maybe just changing the verbiage to close.
Are we
Yeah, and
interpreting that correctly, Cynthia?
So there could be various reasons.
Yes.
It could be the cases were transferred, and we're counting them as closed out from this caseworker. It could be that this caseworker, because I know that this caseworker is transferring or is being promoted to a supervisor position, that, over the last month when other caseworkers were being given additional cases, that this caseworker wasn't being given additional cases and was therefore, able to work through and close out some of her cases. So it could be a combination of all those factors. A, from her transferring, B, she didn't have additional cases, therefore she could, work through and get these closed out. There's a lot of different factors involved, but I can look into it more and get you more specific information on that, which is a good thing.
Mr. Chair, if I could.
Go
I
ahead.
think also over these next few months, as you're seeing caseworkers transfer to senior caseworkers or supervisors, there's a lot of case transfer going on. So I think what Cindy's indicating is part of it could be they closed, part of it could be they transferred to a new supervisor, and part of it could be a different process happened for that case. It could have moved too far at some point in time. So I think we can certainly granulate that data when we see transfers of caseworkers that aren't related to just a net change. They closed a case, they gained a case. Because you could look at the closed case 18 under one employee number, and you see on the prior page, you see an increase of 18 cases. But I wouldn't make the assumption that they're the same 18 cases necessarily, unless she was able to tell us that. So I think we can certainly get more granular, and that probably will be most important over these next few months while they make the rest of the hires. And as you see people transition, we have folks who can't transition yet because they don't have that trained person in behind them yet to take on the cases. So we can make that more clear.
You all set, Harry? Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Here's
I
the
know.
best part.
It's a lot of information. There's a lot of layers to our department, and it's a lot to work through. So our next slide is our adoption slide. So, and we look at this every month. We have a lot of children actually that are freed for adoption. So as of June, the end of June, we had 50 children on our list that are freed for adoption. Of those 50 children, 10 of those children are without an adoptive resource. So 40 of them do already have an adoptive resource and are in the process of the adoption. And we had 3 children adopted last month. So far this year, the information I've received is that we have 13 children that have been adopted. I do want to add that I've had conversation today with our adoption workers and one of our lawyers in the department, and we and Steve, and we are kind of looking at all of these children in the adoption process, and kind of the number that we have, how many are waiting, how long they've been waiting. So we are trying to work on this area specifically. I've met with the staff several times, trying to get processes. They're excellent with what they do. They know the processes very well. Sometimes there's timeframes that are kind of out of our hands, but this is an area of focus because we do have so many children that are freed for adoption, and should be able to have that permanency sooner than later. So I'm hoping that we're going to see a lot of change here on this slide in the next month or so. So does anybody have any questions on this data point?
No questions.
Oh, Mr. Reagan,
Huh?
Mr. Reagan.
Mr. Reagan, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Cynthia, what do you attribute to this dramatic rise in the number of children freed for adoption since January 21?
I think that they've just been able to really focus on the process. I think that, you know, I think our adoption workers are also caseworkers, so they do have some combined caseloads, which makes it difficult. So we've been really working on, you know, focusing on the adoptions to see, you know, to get them, you know, completed. So I think that, you know, working with them and having awareness of, you know, the number of children that we do have freed for adoption is helping them work through all that paperwork. It takes a lot for a child to be adopted. There's a lot of background paperwork and checks and double checks and things that have to be completed. So they've been really trying to focus on, you know, moving some of these children through this process towards permanent.
So if I'm reading this correctly, the 20 children were freed for adoption in January. And over the past 6 months, about 240 children have been freed for adoption. Is that correct?
No.
Okay.
No, we have a total right now of 50 children. We've had 13 children adopted this year.
So these are children that,
It's the totals per month. So in January, we had 20, February, we had about 34. I'm just looking at the graph. I don't have my numbers in front of me. You know, March was about 37. So it continued to go up. We had 51, you know, or more. And as children were being adopted, now we're down to 50. But again, we are really working on this process. We have a lot of children too that are half free. That means that, you know, one parent has surrendered, and we're waiting for the other parent to surrender for that child to be freed. So we have a lot of children too that are kind of in that status as well.
okay, thank you.
Anyone else? I don't see any more questions.
Okay. So in here, we kind of sum everything up in a graph, or, you know, in the graph circle again. So we have our 31 of our kids that are in foster care placement. You know, we have the 31 kids that are in certified foster care homes. We have 51% of them that are in kinship, which is outstanding because that, you know, puts us at the family first, you know, criteria where we're going to need to be in September. Our institutional care is down to 5%, which is again outstanding for our family first criteria, which would, you know, is to be below 12%. So we're doing great there. We have, you know, 1% of our children are in supervised independent living programs. And that's where a child, you know, anywhere between the ages of 16, no older than 21, who is exiting out of foster care can receive support as they kind of transition from foster care into, you know, community living on their own. There's a lot of money and support out there for these children to help them, you know, from anywhere from their first apartment to, you know, making sure that they have the services that they need to be successful. So, you know, we're kind of hoping to see that number grow as well. And then we have 7% that are on a trial discharge. So then again, on the other side, we have our averages. Again, the best thing there is that our kinship is at 50%. So we want to keep that at 50% or higher. And our institutional care average is at 5%, and it's outstanding. OCFS is, extremely proud of where we are with those numbers. As Family First, again, starts into place, in September of this year.
Any questions? Mr. Reagan.
Cynthia, with this chart in the future, could you have next to the percentage number, the actual number of children, and where it says foster care placements at the top, and then average foster care placements also at the top, give us the total number of children so we can associate the percentage increase or decrease with actual numbers of children?
Absolutely. We can add that in there.
Thank you.
Ms. Hager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Ackerman, you mentioned that 50% was the goal for Families First. I thought I had read somewhere that it was a lot higher than that. Is that your ultimate? Okay, yeah.
So that's a good question. So by September, they would really like, the goal has to be 50% kinship and 12% or lower for your institutional care. So right now we are spot on. And then as we move through to 2023, there is discussion on that number for kinship being as high as a 90%. Now I can tell you that in discussion, with OCFS and talking to different commissioners, the state of Texas is about 2 years ahead of us in Family First. So now they are finding that, kinship is a really good thing, and that is where you really want to try to place these children, but they're starting to see some issues with that, that maybe not all children are best fit into a kinship. So they're kind of reevaluating that. So we might see those percentages change a little bit. But that's, they're 2 years ahead of us where they have already worked through some of these roadblocks that we won't have to work through. So I'm hoping to actually learn more about that. We have a conference going on right now, so I'm hoping during the commissioners meeting that I learn more about kind of what they're seeing as potential future numbers. So, but that's a really good question. So we're not really sure in the future where that number will go. But right now we are meeting the criteria. So that's fantastic.
Thank you. That answers my question exactly. Thank you.
Mr. Fay.
Yep.
Can I ask, I don't know if I heard you right or not, but if I'm a 20-year-old and I'm unemployed, could I be living under supervised independent living?
If you were in foster care, the criteria is that you have to be exiting foster care to receive that service.
But if
So and it's just a transitional phase.
Mr. Fay, go ahead.
I'm still, in my mind, I'm saying that I'm renting an apartment to a 20-year-old that's under supervised independent living. He's living by himself. Can he be unemployed?
I believe that employment is all part of that process as well. It's more of a transitional fund to help them, get set up, counseling through the process. How are they doing? Is everything going okay? Some of these children, if they choose to exit foster care, may not have any other family at all. So they do, they do have their foster parents, but they don't have any extended family outside. So it's a resource to help them be successful because again, there is the link between children and foster care and, the justice system. So it's another program to kind of help transition those children, through to be successful in life. So we only right now, I believe, have one person that's in that program.
Thank you.
Mr. Akers. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yep. On the 7% trial discharge, can you tell me what happens there? Is the court ruling that the child is able, what are the scenarios, able to be adopted, not able to be adopted, can go back to the parents, or what happens there in that 7%? The court.
So I don't have that information right in front of me, but what I can tell you, I don't have the specifics, unless Steve wants to speak to that. But what I can tell you is they, once a child is home on trial, and things are really going well, they do a trial discharge, again, to, wait and see kind of how that's going to work out. But I don't have the exact definition here, but I can get that for you.
So trial is actually meaning temporary then, not actually the court system then, is what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay, so I was looking at it, there was a court order that a trial had determined that the child was capable or not capable or adopted, whatever. So it's just it means temporary discharge. I understand. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Do you have anything else, Cindy, that you want to put in the back?
There's one more.
There's one more? Oh, I'm sorry, you've got a back page.
Eligibility programs. Eligibility programs.
Yeah.
And I can kind of sum this one up. So these are our eligibility programs. So we've got our cases. Sorry, I'm going a little bit too fast. So we have our cases for June of 19, 20, and 21. And then we have the number of individuals that we serve within our county for each month. And then we have our averages. So one thing that I do want to say in regards to our eligibility programs, our staff do a phenomenal job with our eligibility programs. When I had my commissioner training, and at that point I learned more about the commissioner dashboard, which follows a lot of our eligibility programs. And we are probably, a county that is definitely high up on the charts by, we open cases, we work through cases quickly, we provide great services. They monitor all this for our community members that need eligibility. We don't have very many cases that linger. The commissioner that actually came up and worked with me said that our numbers were outstanding. He wished his numbers looked like ours. That we really work through processes very quickly, very well. And we actually have a lot of our, most of our documentation entered into the systems for these programs are spot on and don't need to, are rejected back to be resubmitted. So kudos to our staff that run these departments or these units. They do an outstanding job. And these numbers are a little bit difficult right now because we do have COVID numbers, basically, in this data. So I think it's going to be, looking different as we are coming out of COVID and we start seeing, kind of what the effects were through, the 2020 and the beginning of 2021 as we move on to, 2022. So.
Anybody else? There are no additional questions, Cindy, regarding the last bit of material.
No, but all I would say again is I recommend or suggest that, if you guys do have questions that you think about later on this data, we are definitely open to, any ideas that you have, any questions that you have, things that you would, like to have clarified. Maybe something you didn't see that you would like on here. We really want this to be a working document and to provide you, information that you are looking for and that is understandable. So, so I look forward to your feedback.
Okay. Well, I'll give you a little feedback right now. I think that what you've done in putting this together is 10 steps above, what we've been getting either through printed matter or almost a semi-annual report as opposed to something with a little meat on the bone. This certainly puts a little meat on the bone. Mm-hmm. And I encourage this committee to taken a good look at it. And if there's anything in there that you think should be included, deleted, lipstick put on it, make it better, let's hear about it. If you don't say something, nothing's going to get done with what you're thinking about. So I think that's important. This is a start. I don't look forward to a book every month, but I think 4 pages is pretty easy to assimilate before and at our meetings. And I liken it to what we've done with the chemical dependency and the mental health statistics. You can look at it, you can see it, it's easily decipherable. It provides a great deal of information, and not only for this board, but for employees, when they see their clock number up there and their activity for that period, I think it might cause people to have some thoughts about their work product and how they're producing and what they're doing. So I think you've done a great thing, and I know the county administrator and the deputy have had a lot to do with this, and I appreciate that from all of you. And as I said, I thank you very much. I look forward to seeing this as it progresses, because I do feel that it'll get changed around probably in the next few months. But in the next few months, we're going to get a whole lot more information that we're going to be able to go back to this, the first, and make some comparisons. And that's what it's all about. And they could be good, they could be bad. But this board has to deal with it, and this board will deal with it. So, Cynthia, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to say, a kudos to Ruth and Dylan, because this is a huge product of their hard work. So I just want to throw that out there.
All right. Thank you very much, Cynthia.
All right. Thank you.
All right. We will move along.
You're not going anywhere.
Something else.
On screen share. Oh, she's next up for vacancy. She's next up for vacancy.
Oh, for vacancy?
Yeah, we can go right into those.
Well, we'll get right to you with the vacancy committee then. How's that, Ruth?
So we only have social services for this committee to take a look at, and so I turn it over to Cindy.
Okay, so my screen share's off, I take it?
Yep, we can see you.
Okay. Okay, so the first position that I have, I hope I have these in the right order, is our new position. This is a create and fill. We are asked, this is going to be our last new position right now, but what we have done, like I said, we are trying to even out the playing field. So right now we have a unit that has all of our home finders, our homemakers. We're going to put our kinship navigator and people like that into this unit. And we would like to have a supervisor for them. This is the new way of, like I said, we would like to, look again at opening some more of our own foster care homes. These staff have to do diligent work with even our emergency kinship homes. So this would be, a really good addition, to that unit. So now all of our units would have about 5 or 6 or 7 caseworkers with a supervisor over them. So we're asking for, this one new grade B to even out those groups.
Questions for Cindy on that one? Okay, keep going. Next one is the homemaker.
Okay, so the homemaker, this is a position where the staff resigned. She was able to get a job near her family. So we only have 2 homemakers, so this homemaker definitely needed. These staff, do direct in-home services to help these families. So we are hoping to get this position backfilled on an immediate fill.
Questions for Cindy on this one? Okay, then you've got 3 caseworkers. The first 2 are children's services and then adult protective.
Okay, so this caseworker left via termination. So this caseworker did have a full caseload. We are and also helped with our foster and adoptive program. So, and like I said, when I was talking about adoption, we really want to work at, working through all these kids that we do have that are open for adoption. So this staff did have one of those caseloads. So we are really looking to backfill this position as soon as possible on an immediate fill.
Questions?
Mr. Akers?
So Ruth, maybe you can answer this, or Mrs. Ackerman, but the reimbursement is 72. Typically, they were always 100. Is that a change, or is it these particular?
So caseworkers are usually either 72 or 81.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Cindy, next one.
Okay, so the next one is another children's services caseworker. And this caseworker that was in this position is actually one being promoted to a grade B. So we are, definitely looking to backfill this caseworker. She will be keeping her caseload until we can backfill this position. So if we can backfill this position on immediate fill, that would be fantastic as well.
Questions? Okay, next one.
Okay, so this next caseworker is actually from our Adult Protective Services unit. We did have our grade B supervisor of a very long term retire. So one of the caseworkers within that unit was promoted to be the grade B. So this caseworker position is open now, and the numbers in Adult Protective Services are quite high. So we would like to get this caseworker position filled also on an immediate fill.
Questions on that one? Okay, Secretary 1.
Okay, so this Secretary 1 is from Child Protective Services. This lady has retired, and her last day was actually last Thursday. So we are looking to backfill this position again on an immediate fill as soon as possible.
Questions on the Secretary? Okay, and lastly, the senior caseworker.
So lastly, is a senior caseworker. This caseworker also is another promotion, which leaves open this senior caseworker position. This one thing that's specific about this senior caseworker is this senior caseworker does do a lot of training in the field with our new caseworkers. She does a lot of work, which typically involves more of the law enforcement, the child advocacy center, and more of the, children that are more, involved in medical situations. So she has that expertise. So we are really looking to backfill this position so that we can continue on with that type of training. We do have a lot of new training going on, a lot of interactive training, and this is just another huge piece of that, but more, with more involved cases. So we're asking to get this one backfilled also on an immediate fill.
Any questions on the senior caseworker or any of the others presented this evening? Okay, sounds great, Cindy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Cindy. We'll move on to the county administrator's report.
So I beg your indulgence for a moment. I missed you last week, and so I have an update, if you will. It's a little bit longer than usual. Wanted to give you a few bits about COVID to start with. Our current average is about 2 cases per day. And just to look back 1 year ago, we had a total of 243 cases with 9 active. Today, we have 7,580 with 16 active. So that shows you just a quick snapshot of the year that's just passed. Our latest reporting from the state, because as you know, as soon as we figure it out, they seem to change it up a little bit on us. They're no longer separating out the 18 and under population and the 18 and over. Regardless, what it looks like for St. Lawrence County at this time, at least 1 dose of vaccination, St. Lawrence County has 51.7%. Fully vaccinated is 49.2%. And our last reporting with the 18 plus was 64. And that's an area that we're really proud of. As you know, that's one of our most vulnerable populations. So seeing that number creep a little closer to that magic 70 is certainly something we're in favor of. But to meet that 70% goal, St. Lawrence County would need approximately 5,500 more individuals vaccinated. So we're working on strategies. As you know, you're hearing and seeing lots of different kinds of opportunities. We were just last weekend at Bassmasters. That resulted in 5 pre-registrations and 1 walk-up. So there was a clinic, I believe, last week in one of the local municipalities. We had 1 person come the entire time. So we have pulled back a little bit. Vaccinations of Pfizer are being provided in the department. So there's opportunities to come right on site. We'll have staff present rather than deploying staff for those types of turnout. However, lots of conversations going on about the anticipated school year and how we might be able to, as you heard from Jolene tonight, put the wheels in motion to have everything ready should testing be required and make sure that we can make vaccinations available to those groups and those districts. The county fair is another opportunity coming up that will provide vaccines by public health there. They haven't set up the schedule just yet, but when we have that, we'll certainly share that out with everyone. We heard today that Plattsburgh, the other mass vaccination site following Potsdam, will administer their last vaccines today, and then they'll be shutting down. And that is our last mass vaccination site in the North Country. I just wanted to mention that we had talked when we finished those control room conversations some time ago, fortunately, that the group would be assembling, and that's representatives from all 7 counties, and they have elected to come up to Jake's on the Water next week. So I'm happy that St. Lawrence County will be the host of the folks coming up who spent many days, weeks, months, and the year on the phone in a variety of capacities trying to address COVID, come up with new ways to help out, and make sure that our county responses were in concert with one another. Departments are, I wanted to mention just as a sort of the next phase for us, departments are resuming travel. I think I did mention to you that we've certainly lost a year of the training and professional development opportunities. Many have converted to virtual. Some still have a cost attached, but they're also beginning to hold in-person trainings. And we have folks that are attending to the COVID protocols, making sure that where they're traveling, they have addressed what's necessary for the unvaccinated potentially, but that we are having folks get back on the road and they're making some trainings and getting some opportunities to endeavor their professional development. Any questions on the COVID update at this time? Mr. Burke?
Mr. Burke. I was going to ask Jolene when she was presenting, but I didn't want to put her on the spot.
Sure, and I'll get you the answer if I don't have it.
Given what we've experienced, what will the public health department look like as we progress in the upcoming months? I mean, I'm sure there were lessons learned and experience gained. And I saw in a NISAC book that the stimulus funds can be used for public health. So I guess I'm wondering, and again, if it's under discussion, that's fine. I would just like to know that there has been kind of a year-long review of what we've been through. It sounds like you're meeting on Jake's on the Water, but I don't know what the agenda is for that. But as it relates to St. Lawrence County, it would be nice to know that we're ready for the next pandemic, should it ever come.
Absolutely. I think, as you know, we're on the heels of looking at a new director. I think we're looking at our budget process currently. And I will tell you, as Jolene indicated in her presentation this evening, they're beginning to take a look at all of the things that didn't get accomplished during COVID. So even the opportunity to do that also gives them, I think, an opportunity to look at the staff we've accumulated in that time. The state's looking at pushing out, they've just actually released some information today about releasing some graduate type students in a fellowship or fellow type environment to assist counties in each of the counties. So I think we are going to see a changing face. I mean, we always are interested in growing our own talent and looking at folks and seeing what they may be able to acquire to assist the department. But it will be a great opportunity with the acclamation of a new director as well, whether that be our deputy or anyone else, that we're able to look forward and say, what have we learned and how do we want to move that ahead?
And I wonder if we could ask our public health board to give us their thoughts on what what a new department or a revised department might look like. What do you think, Kevin?
Well, we don't meet again, I think it's in August, so I believe we're taking this month off.
We can certainly
I think
inquire.
overall, they evolved, they adapted, they were aggressive. Jolene in getting these clinics out of the schools rather quickly, that was her initiative. And certainly Dana did much of the legwork, and so like anything else, like any situation that's evolving, I think we reacted well. I did question about our expenditure of the testing. It's not used much, but I think it was important to give people peace of mind with the testing that was available when we had those numbers. It's been nice to get the machines a little bit earlier. It's been nice that Claxton had gotten to in the month long before they got the machine, if they had gotten to Claxton to test, to use the machine so that they were ready when the machine came in the box. So things like that. I mean, this is something out of the blue, and I think that they really responded well. Maybe put Dana over the edge and seek easier deployment, but I think that Jolie did a wonderful job, in taking over that role, and certainly Dr. Williams, and the hospitals, and the, right in the very beginning. I don't think we didn't have the school's cooperation. I think Dr. Williams was instrumental in getting it right off the bat after those students came here unannounced. And I think that was a very hectic time period because the county was relatively safe. And when the colleges, particularly student Potsdam, brought those kids back without actually talking with us, and fortunately we discovered it on actually March 17th, one day after the state had shut down. And Dr. Williams was instrumental in getting 20 kits for testing over to SUNY Potsdam for those, and 5 actually came back positive. So, and I think we quickly, in shutting down that bus route, those kids were going around the community. I mean, there was some hostility that we did so initially from the colleges, and I think Dr. Williams was instrumental in muting that, and Ruth and her team, and getting everybody together. The control room here. So I don't think there's certainly things we could have done better, but I think they did an extraordinary job. I really do.
If I could just clarify, it wasn't to critique.
Oh, no,
That wasn't.
I rambled, John, my apologies.
No, what have we learned is what I take it. Yeah, what have we learned and how can we continue to improve?
In mental health, we always took the time to look back and see what could have been done better, what could we do in the future. And this has certainly been a crisis to our community.
Well, you mentioned, John, I think we're finding now with the mental health, certainly we had our overdose, the amount of overdoses that we had escalated dramatically, I think 30 or 40%. So we didn't talk about that tonight. So, from the isolation and whatnot. So domestic, the sheriff could probably talk about the domestic cases that they had, situations.
Anyone else?
Okay, moving on. Wanted to make you aware that with regard to the interim final rule relative to the American Rescue Plan, comments were due last week, and I submitted comments on 3 main areas focused on providing the opportunity or adjusting the interim final rule to provide for capital investment, the roads and bridges conversation that so many counties are having, but also to include the revenue calculation. We're going rather complicated and looking at the numbers between 2019 and 2020 and looking at revenue loss. I think there should be more flexibility associated with our ability to calculate the loss that the county has seen, as well as not begin that timeline on March 3rd, 2021, rather look back to March of 2020. So those have all been submitted on the county's behalf. Wanted next to move on to Buildings and Grounds Committee. We met last week, and I'll just mention a few of the items that we are looking at. You will hear more on these at the next Operations Committee meeting. Out of 6 items we reviewed, We talked about renovations that we've been talking about for some time at the Public Safety Complex. Looked at some preliminary drawings associated with how that might move forward, and we'd like to bring those forward for your consideration. This would involve some department movement, but ultimately be centered around a new 911 dispatch center. Many of you, if you haven't toured over there, we should get you over for a tour, but also to prepare you for what the interest is in moving forward. There are some final changes, I think, minimal though they may be, that we'd like to make with the conversations we're having, so we can bring you the information as the Buildings and Grounds Committee is approving of for your consideration to move forward. That would also, with regard to the dispatch center, allow us the opportunity to deal with the grant we received for the upgrade in equipment, but also to do some forward thinking. So many conversations are going on, and they are part of that conversation as well. Second item we've been talking about is what we for years have called the matron's house. And this is the front home looking side of the jail, of the old jail, that now we have vacated 11 years ago. We now understand that to be called the sheriff's house promptly, and we've located the original drawings from 1923, I believe. And our new historian has some great ideas about reuse in that location. Not the entire facility, but just specific to the sheriff's house. So we'd like to bring you and have them come in and speak to you about some ideas they have moving forward. This last year, you may recall, one of the projects that we were able to complete with the facility management plans and the funds that you set aside for that was a new roof over the boiler room. So that's the back portion of the jail. And this year, as part of that same plan, we're looking at a new roof over top of the sheriff's house. And that would deal in large part with the moisture and some of the leaking portions of that facility, which again has been uninhabited for a number of years. Next, we discussed the warehouse, and our new records management officer has been hard at work getting departments to take her very seriously in reviewing their records retention, and also to get over there and assist in our purging of materials we are not any longer required to maintain. So that project's underway. I believe our shredding company has to come back at least 3 times to fill up on materials that we can part with. But we also want to take a look at that for an opportunity potentially to site our Buildings and Grounds department. As many of you know, Buildings and Grounds is located central here in the courtyard, and that creates a lot of traffic, that creates a lot of equipment moving around. And if possible, obviously very preliminary at this point, that we were able to move them and renovate that warehouse area, we'd be interested in having that dialogue. And then that would vacate this back area, I think, and make it much safer. So that's part of our conversations. We also have had the discussions relative to family court and their interest in additional space. We know prior to COVID, we had conversations with them about an additional hearing room. We have continued those conversations, and as they resume in-person proceedings, I think it only becomes more important. As we know, expanded aspects of the family require both additional magistrates to hear, as well as additional room for the levels of family involved in many of these proceedings. I did, in those 4 conversations, talk with the Buildings and Grounds Committee about the potential to bring to vacancy the project manager concept, to bring someone on or bring a consultant type entity on, a firm that would oversee these projects. Our Buildings and Grounds staff may be able to do some of the work, but they're pretty lean as far as oversight of a project. And if we're doing all of these over the next few years and the board is supportive of any of these taking shape, it would be very valuable and in our best interest to have somebody both watching the budget and the project for us and keeping us on track. That is something I think if we were to look back in time at our interoperability, we have tasked our previous directors, along with both the oversight of EMS and fire, we have tasked them also with a capital project, and that is no small undertaking. Fortunately, we've had a great consultant in our Blue Wing folks that have assisted with that. However, going forward, I think we need to look carefully at what that means for us. And then lastly, the item I visited just for a few minutes at the end of our meeting was a conversation about this room and our step forward into 2021 with regard to sound quality. I had the good fortune of listening to your meeting electronically last week, and it was very difficult at some points to separate out voices. I know all the cadence of your voices, so I knew who was speaking, but I am certain that the public doesn't. And it would be valuable, I think, because we're using our YouTube proceedings as our record to make sure that we can attribute that. We also know in this room, the court floor is no longer able to be sanded, if you will. So we have really ground it down. We probably sanded it, I think, about 7 times to get one more life out of it and one more life out of it. So that's one area, as well as you may recall, we had some damage to the back with some moisture. And part of what that entailed was looking at the asbestos and the wallpaper and materials used when this room was put together. So we want to have some conversations about what we should do. You know, it's never easy. I think the last time was about 7 to 10 years ago. We took care of these chairs, some of you may remember, and that was a big to-do to take care of some of the things I think that both maintain the integrity and the architecture in this room, but also step us forward. I don't think there'll be a time where we don't broadcast our meetings again. And being able to do that in a way that also captures the statements and the comments and the votes is very important to our process. So I just want to mention, we've started that dialogue. We've not gotten very far, but I think it's an important one to have and to look at how we might schedule improving the location of this room. So that is Space Committee. Wanted to mention to you, the IDA has requested a letter of support from the chairman with regard to a consolidated funding application that ATL will be submitting, Atlantic Testing, for a building. They'll be seeking renovation opportunities in Canton at 80 Lincoln Street. So that has been a request that we have received. Wanted to mention to you that our budget entry for 2021 projections and 2022 requests is coming to a close, which will then begin the department review process with the budget team. Those are scheduled from August 3rd to August 31st. I will send you along, just as a reminder, at the top of your email, a schedule of those. You are welcome to join any of them. We will be meeting both here, and because grand jury still uses this room, we will also be meeting in room 226 A and B. But you're welcome to join anytime. If you can pop in and visit with us, even on Zoom, we would welcome you into those conversations and hear how the budget team goes about our work. Do want to update you on a SAM grant. We put in for a SAM grant in 2018, and I'm happy to report we finally got our money. $50,000 was received at the end of last week out of our courthouse door project, many of you may recall. So that project was just about $200,000 for this facility, and we received $50,000 to minimize the cost to our taxpayers. So that was a great day. I believe we only have one outstanding SAM grant left. And Senator Ritchie was responsible for getting that grant for us. Wanted to let you know, last week was the first department head meeting in person since February of 2020. We were able to both have our meeting in this room, conduct some training, and share a meal together. So it was a great opportunity. 2 of our department heads hadn't sat with the group yet as a whole. So it really was an opportunity for everyone to get together and certainly talk about how we might move forward as a group. I would like, if we can, to return to our summer event for employee recognition out in the courthouse lawn in August. We provided some dessert for our staff and do it in a COVID-safe manner. But also wanted to mention to you that our department head service project for this year is suicide prevention awareness. And our community services director is going to organize some training for a train the trainer type for our department heads. If you recall, a couple of years ago, we did some mental health first aid because we recognize the fact that anyone can walk into any of our offices, especially now that we've reopened, with a lot going on. And the way that we can respond, the way that we prepare our staff to respond is critical to the outcome of those situations. So one of these aspects, one of these trainings is called Question, Persuade, and Refer. And so it is going to cost a little bit, but I'd like to have some of the department heads trained and be able to share that out both with their colleagues as well as our employees on staff. I'd also like to revisit, if there's no objection in the future, the mental health first aid. I feel strongly that our entire staff should be trained on mental health first aid going forward. Next item, you've received an invitation to the NISAC Fall Conference. That's scheduled for September 13th through September 15th. And just as a reminder, this conference is going to be held in Syracuse, but just as a reminder on the board's policy, 2 are encouraged to attend from each party. And then if there's additional, as you may recall, we've missed 2 full conferences with the fall of 2020 and then the winter of 21. From an expense standpoint, if more are interested in going, I just bring that back to you and the board can make a determination if you'd like to capture anyone that'd like to go. We have some new legislators. It would be a great opportunity, and it really isn't that far this time being just in Syracuse. Next up is a refresher to the initiative formerly known as the County Tour. So we have a couple of schools that historically came and brought their government class or one of their high school classes to visit here, and they would tour departments, and then they would get to spend some time in the court, they get to spend some time in the jail, and have an overall great day. But we've never had great participation from our schools. And as we know, in returning from COVID, field trips might not be the top of the Board of Education's agenda going forward. So what we'd like to do, and what our Youth Bureau Director, Alexa Backus, is working with her interns to do, is not only to refresh the county tour, but also to make it virtual. So they are going to be interviewing department heads. They're going to be posting some of this up on our website to get some information out there. But also when school returns, to be able to get out to the districts and invite them to come on a county tour, whether they're allowed to do it virtually or they're allowed to come in and see us. It's always been great. The schools have come in, they typically start out in this room. The chairman or one of you who are available come in and visit with them a bit and give them a pop quiz or two. But they've always seemed to enjoy their visits here. And years ago, we had greater numbers than we have recently, unrelated to COVID. But certainly coming out of it, it would be great to be able to offer that virtually as well. And speaking of, our final edits will be done this week on the intranet. If you remember last July, we rolled out the update to our new website, which I'm happy to tell you on average, we see about 40,000 visits a month to our website. So we've certainly seen upwards in the 50s and close to 60 during peak COVID times. And we keep that dashboard going as well as our COVID center with relevant information. But still a hub, and I'm happy with the improvements we've made with the public website. This is going to be an opportunity on the virtual side, a hub for county employees, a great way to communicate about events. Certainly sometimes because you work for the county, you hear about these things, and now they would be able to have that knowledge, opportunity, and to communicate needs between departments. As many of you know, departments, especially public health, needed help in the call center during COVID, a number of different things. This would be a great place for people to share those needs between departments and just to gain more information. Any questions? I'm almost done. For next,
How much American Rescue money have we received so far?
we have received $10.4 million. It is in a
Of
reserve.
that, we've just given some to the Office of Aging.
No, that's separate.
That's separate.
Yep, that's a separate pot.
Thank you.
Okay. So for next week, we will have the tabled resolution on the collection for Ogdensburg of the final 1%. We will have the resolution that was tabled tonight for the Sheriff's Office for the boat motor. We will have a resolution that I have been requested to add with regard to the NYPA power proceeds. Some of you, I think, were aware of that. We'll add that resolution to the agenda. And then there was a fourth one that tonight on the National Marine Sanctuary that we'll add as well. I did send to you last Thursday the draft environmental impact statement on the sanctuary. It is long, but you could cruise through it and see the two options that are currently available there before the meeting and the discussion next week. Also, as a reminder, Drescher and Malecki, our auditors, will be here for finance. There will be a meeting of the Audit and Fiscal Stability Committee prior to the Finance Committee meeting where they'll do their typical annual review. Also on finance agenda will be the second quarter financial update that we traditionally provide the month after the close of the quarter. Also, just as meeting reminders, the Consolidation Committee will meet on the 27th or the 28th. I have just one or two more to follow up on. With a review of the pilot results. The Ogdensburg dispatch pilot concluded last Thursday morning. We'll revisit the tax collection foreclosure. The Consolidation Committee had put that on hold based upon the sales tax discussion and the ultimate extension through March when that was resolved for the county to continue to provide Ogdensburg with their share beyond the current expiration before or up until they can collect their own. So we'll revisit that item, and they've made two additional requests with regard to healthcare and then with regard to law enforcement. Also, I'm going to be scheduling a work session, which you'll be extended an invitation to. Should we exceed the number required in a public notice as far as the majority, we'll schedule multiple work sessions with regard to our IT infrastructure and our security. So that we'll put out to you. I'm going to meet with Rick Johnson later this week, and we'll come up with a few days that we can make available to you to attend virtually or in person. Also want to schedule a work session for American Rescue Plan funds. In the absence of having a dedicated committee, would like to just have that open dialogue. I have department heads submitting by the end of this week some suggestions. Many of them already have shared those with me, but would like to be able to pull together what the county's needs would be. I know the treasurer's been working on what that revenue loss as it currently stands would look like. And I think that would help to guide any county use of those funds in the future or recommendations that the group might make to the board to consider. And then as a reminder, we are coordinating our board meeting for August at the county fair. So just wanted to make sure you were reminded of that. That's August 2nd, I believe. And then lastly, I did just want to mention to you that with regard to DSS, we have had some oversight review by OCFS related to complaints. We're working with them now to understand what that looks like. I believe they have not found anything with regards to the complaints received about DSS employees. I will also let you know that we're reviewing the complaints that were brought forward at the board meeting and the practices that were involved with that situation. Certainly appreciate your feedback on the statistics that were presented tonight. I think I started mentioning to the board in about March that we were working on that. And so we took that grid that you see in Google Drive, brought some of it to life. I think found some of it not to be necessary from 1999, may not be relevant any longer. But also, you know, there may be charts worth dropping. There may be additional charts. I've had a couple requests to add. So that, as much as the children that it represents, should be a living, breathing document that you all can add to, take away from, and understand better. Our hope is to better inform your decisions. You've taken a leap of faith this year with the positions you've added, and tracking that pool, I think, is still going to be a game changer. I think having the authority to fill those caseworker positions, get them trained, and have them ready to step in for caseworkers as they depart or go on leave or any reason they can't maintain the level of work they need to, they'll have a backup. And I really think that's been part of, not the whole, but part of the breakdown. And as we look at these cases and as we understand the system problems, you'll be better informed to make a determination on those without feeling blind to the process. So that's the goal of bringing this, of putting so much time into the information that we took an hour to review tonight. And certainly will be a conversation, if you recall, when we started community services, those were long conversations as well. And now Jay can point to certain statistics. You all have working knowledge of what they mean, and then we move on. And if there need to be tweaks or understanding of staffing or changes, that becomes the relevant conversation rather than the unknown. And that's really the goal there. Any questions?
No questions.
All right, that's all I have.
All right, moving along, committee reports. Board of Health, Mr. Akins.
Later meeting in August, we're taking July off.
CDP Board of Directors, Mr. Sheriff.
CDP Board of Directors did not meet this month, not going to meet next month.
Community Services Board, Ms. Kern.
We are not meeting in July. We will meet again September 7th.
Office of the Aging Advisory Board, Mr. Denisha.
Last Monday, June 14th, next meeting is Monday, September 13th, and I'm pleased to announce that the senior farmers market trips are going to start again. And it's for offices for the aging and public transit, which those 60 and older. Free round trip to the farmers market.
Why are you looking at me?
Oh. I'm not even gonna touch that. I was kind of looking.
I know.
It starts Friday, August 13th, or excuse me, Friday, August 13th. And Saturday, 14th, and Tuesday, 7th.
Thank you. the Youth Advisory Board, from all.
I first want to start by congratulations to Alexa and the rest of the Youth Advisory Board. We were the recipients of the Champions of Change for Kids Youth-led Mask Design Contest, and that award was given by the New York State School Boards Association. So I want to start by saying that. I'm very proud of the work that they did with that. So right now, the Youth Bureau currently has 6 summer interns that are working in the department. They're working on social media and newsletter content, increasing our team involvement with the youth committee, as well as revamping those county tours. And I think that the virtual tours will be super successful. I know one of the obstacles and challenges that schools face when it comes to field trips is much like anybody else that has to budget, they budget a certain dollar amount to overtime that goes to the bus drivers for those field trips. And that usually amounts to about 1 trip per year. And sometimes there's additional costs that the different grades have to do to fundraise just to cover the cost of 1 trip per year. So I think that the virtual tours will be really, really beneficial to the kids in St. Lawrence County. They started interviews with department heads this week to prepare for that, so that's very exciting. Our last meeting for the Youth Advisory Board was on June 24th in Cole Steeples. One of our members, and he's a senior at Governor, actually presented to us about the United Project, which is a project that he's initiated as kind of a grassroots campaign. He started with a Twitter account to just engage youth, and not just youth, people in the community with conversations that could be hard conversations about maybe political choices and different events that are going on, taking the partisan and the political stance out of it and thinking about government for people, not government by parties. So he presented to us on that initiative. We also discussed the RFP funding for the 2022-2024 budget season, and right now we have 22 organizations that have requested the RFP application. The deadline is July 30th, and that information has been communicated via the radio, news outlets, and then all of our previous partners through the Youth Committee or the Youth Advisory Board have been contacted for that. So if there's anybody listening right now that would like to put their RFP in for that, July 30th is the deadline for those funds. We currently have 3 openings for the Youth Advisory Board. So anybody interested, or if you know anybody that's interested, if you could send them the bio data sheet so that we could get those back in and fill those openings. Our next Youth Advisory Board meeting is Tuesday the 29th at 3 p.m. and next Youth Committee meeting will be on Wednesday, this Wednesday at 1:30. They're also looking to partner to do partnership with St. Lawrence County Suicide Coalition to offer a suicide awareness walk that would be in late September, honoring suicide awareness.
Thank you very much. We'll move right on to old and new business. Any old business? Forsyth.
I just got a question regarding, does anyone know how many boats left Waddington yesterday morning for the bass?
How many?
How many boats left?
10. 10. 7 of them went to the lake.
Well, 8 of them, one boat Morristown, at 7:30. I thought we did 2 years ago, and I think Jim brought the resolution forward to keep them in the St. Lawrence River, St. Lawrence County. We're promoting it, we're funding it, and they're going to Lake Ontario and Chimel. So I was a little discouraged when I saw that. I guess that got lost in the shuffle, but I thought this was benefit St. Lawrence County.
Well, you're absolutely correct, and there was a resolution passed to that effect. I believe a resolution, all
For sure.
and that they include that in their rules. In fact, they actually mapped that out. I remember that they identified an island or something where there's a fish on part of it, but not on the other part. So I agree. I think if we're going to fund something like that, that they don't want to adhere to what we would like to see. Listen, I don't want to spend money to have fishermen go to Jefferson County. We're going to lose it if that's the case. And that's where the winner came from. Took all his fish out of the lake.
And that's what it will show on the TV.
Can we ask the county administrator to let the folks know who were in charge of the tournament, that that is completely different from what this board has directed, and also let the tournament organizers in CNN know as well that it's the pleasure of this board that if you're going to use the county's money, that the fishing occur in St. Lawrence County waters.
Happy to.
Thank you.
What else? Any new business? Mr. Mayor.
So Bassmasters was a tremendous success. The beans ran out of gas, at least the final 3 or 4 days, down to 10. The restaurants did well, the store did well with groceries. They're very complimentary about Waddington. They like fish, being closer to the fish in Clayton. They like the hospitality of people in St. Lawrence County, wherever they stay, whether it's Potsdam, Messina, Orangeburg, Waddington, or whatever. Overwhelming success. They didn't have the vendors, and COVID changed everything. They allowed vendors into Whitaker Park. I think they had pretty good success from what I had seen, that people were purchasing items. Over 1,000 people. Ruth, you were there on Sunday for the weigh-in. I watched the Bassmasters Saturday morning on TV. I watched Icatago catch the big fish. He's a giant. It's a giant. I think but he was on the lake, whatever. And many of those guys went every day to the lake. And, it's an 1.5-hour trip. Boats were lined up when they checked in at Levine's IGA, filling up their trucks, filling up their boats every day. So I think it's important. I think we discussed an old business. I do remember we did have a resolution for that particular year. So I don't think that request was made again this year. So I'm not involved in particulars of it. One of the things that failed to mention when Jolene Unger for the innovations that she did going to the schools, like left out the farms. Many of the large farms here run year round. So it's impossible for the workforce, particularly if they're doing shifts, 8 or 12-hour shifts or whatever, to get to the clinics. And so Jolene organized the bus and brought doctors or nurses that gave the shots and the facilities and an interpreter. And the farmers that I know were greatly appreciative of that. And I think she worked 6 or 7 large farms in the area. One of the problems with the virtual tours, I am only aware of Maggie Warrington that actually comes. Who is the other school? Do you know, Ruth?
I want to say it used to be Morristown, maybe, or Ogdensburg, one over that way, I think.
So typically I greet them. I think Larry, you've greeted them here one time, right?
Yes.
And so one of the problems you can't do with virtual is they can't register vote. And I have a 90% success rate getting them to vote, register the right party. So I can miss that.
Sure we do.
But, and actually, the kids really like the day off. This is, Brian Harmer is the government teacher. He said the kids look through this right from day one. This is the highlight of their year. He's a pretty intense teacher. If anybody from Bearsville knows him. He does a really good job.
This guy coming?
I concur.
You held it well. Go ahead, Nicole.
Just to clarify, so the virtual tours would not replace the in-person tours, right? It would just be an additional option.
Yes, particularly when schools aren't allowing field trips.
So when they come in person, I'll be here, and when they're virtual, you can be all over it.
I see your percentages going down.
Just like that.
Is Andrea still with us by any chance?
I am not sure, but we can.
No, she is. Hi, Andrea.
Yes.
Hi. Hi.
Find my mute. I'm really not sleeping, I promise.
And I was going to ask you earlier earlier when you presented the resolution, but it was really more of new business and it wasn't connected to the resolution. I had a constituent stop by my house today. She is a retired, older citizen in our community. And we were talking about the unemployment benefits that are out there right now. And of course, we know that some of those are probably very much needed, but some of them also are not, as we see businesses shuttering their doors because they don't have staff to work. But we were talking about we're going to continue to see the repercussions of COVID in unimaginable ways for years to come probably, or for sure within the next 12 months, 12 to 18 months for sure. She is seeing a monthly increase in her insurance. This is 80 plus retired, fixed income, $36 a month. Do you know if there's going to be any relief or support for folks to get some, that's a big chunk of change, when you're on a fixed income. Are you aware of anything that might be coming down that could help or relieve them, or any place that we could direct them when this stuff comes up?
Sure. I haven't heard of a ton of changes within the individual Medicare plans yet, but those don't come out until later in the summer of what the new rates are going to be. My hope would be that they would recognize that this has been an extraordinary year for our population, and that there won't be any large increases. But the best advice I would give anyone is, during open enrollment, which starts October 15th to December 7th, to give our office a call, and we can go through what their current plan is, as well as what perhaps are some better options for them, particularly when they are, finding it, very cost prohibitive. Our usual advice, every year is if someone's happy with their plan and it's still affordable and it's meeting their needs, they don't need to do anything during open enrollment. But certainly when people find that their circumstances have changed, they're paying very high prescription costs at the pharmacies, thousands of dollars often a month. They certainly should call our office and we can help. We have a wonderful Medicare counselor, Cindy Ayer, and she's happy to guide them through the best options.
Okay, great, thank you. And if you could use your voice for St. Lawrence County to make sure that they consider that when they look at the new.
Oh, absolutely. Anything that I can do to help, with that, that comes from the federal level. So we're hopeful that they will take into that. Also, we're hoping Social Security, has a higher cost of living increase this year for folks. It's been very minimal for years. So I'm hopeful that that will come across. So yes, I'm happy to do all the advocacy work on my end too.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Thank you, Andrea. Seeing none, we have need for executive session for.
We do, and it is for litigation and personnel, which will include the medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. Those two items.
Any negotiations?
No, and no appointment.
Okay, so.
And no appointments.
We need to move to executive session for litigation and personnel. No motion.
And before you vote,
Mr. Venetia and seconded by Mr.
just so everyone knows, Matt Denner will return to join us for the first portion.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Carried. We'll take a couple of minutes.